Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live today from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. The chairman of the board, Mr. David Reed, is here today. Hello, David Reed.
Good afternoon, sir.
So I saw Cam Ward today at Titans OTAs. They were phase 3, which means it's offense versus defense, though they took their sweet-ass time in getting to the offense versus defense section of OTAs today. And so who wants to hear how Cam Ward looked? Because that's exactly how I'm going to start. It's funny because that's pretty much what everybody was paying attention to today. You know, they allow you to shoot, if you're a TV person, they allow you to shoot, you know, them stretching and then like a couple of periods here and there. And all the cameras were lined up to go get shots of Cam Ward. And so everybody watched Cam and everybody wants to know about Cam. And I know you guys are sitting there saying, Jared, how did Cam look today? So I will tell you, he looked fine. They didn't do too much. There was some 7-on-7 in there. He looked fine. There was some 11-on-11. He looked fine. There was one really good throw Cam made. We'll get to that in a second. There was one really bad decision Cam made. He looked fine. His arm is good. His release is quick, which is very important. I think the quick release is actually more important than having a rocket arm. He has the same kind of nonchalant vibe at the line of scrimmage that he had at Miami. You know, this, oh, yeah, they're bringing a blitz. It's okay. I'll be able to wiggle around it and do everything else. And I'd like to see them kind of work that out of him. I'd like to see Cam kind of be more commanding at the line of scrimmage, more aware at the line of scrimmage, you know, more serious at the line, you know, calling out blitzes and protections and things like that, which I did not see of because, and I'd like that to get worked out before Cam gets his teeth kicked in when he realizes that defensive ends and outside rushers in the National Football League are much bigger and they are much stronger than they are in the ACC, which I don't think should surprise anybody. Cam missed a throw to Calvin Ridley right in front of me in 7-on-7. He had a couple of incompletions in the team period. One was a drop by James Prochet where Cam showed that lightning release where he drops back and he kind of sends the ball over to the right side and he took the snap from the shotgun and, you know, dropped it right out of his hand and put it right there for Prochet. And if Prochet was taller, which almost every receiver the Titans have other than Restrepo is taller, it feels like, than Prochet, the ball probably gets caught and it would have been a nice completion. There was another one that was a drop by Elike Omanor that I don't know if it was a drop as much as it was Gabe Giulilali, who was defending, was all over Omanor, and I would have thrown the flag in that instance. There was one really good throw outside the numbers. I believe it was 7-on-7 outside the numbers to Omanor from Cam, where he really dropped it. You know, he threw a pump fake. You know, Omanor was running a post up the left sideline, and Cam threw a fake to the first guy on that side and then delivered the ball quickly, again, showing that release, which I thought was very, very nice. And I'll say this, Cam throws a good ball. Now, one thing I absolutely thought was overrated from the draft process was, and I don't know if it was the Titans that was putting this out there. I think it was. I think it was Brinker. I'm not exactly sure. But there was this sense of, well, when you see Cam throw the ball in real life, it just looks different. I think that take was overrated. Again, Cam throws a nice ball. He doesn't throw the greatest pass I've ever seen. It doesn't look any different than Ryan Tannehill throwing a pass in practice. Now, look, you won a lot of games with Ryan Tannehill throwing passes in practice. Again, arm strength is not the most important thing. It's not the most important thing in any sport in which you throw the ball. It's not the most important thing in baseball. It's not the most important thing in football. But there was all this chatter when the Titans drafted Cam of, oh, man, when you see Cam throw the ball, it is something special. And I'm here to tell you that again, opinion I thought was a little overrated. I also thought Cam was off target quite a bit, you know, especially kind of in the warm-up periods where guys are just running routes on air. I felt like there were a lot of passes that were high, a little passes that were behind, a little passes that, and again, these passes were just a little bit behind, a little bit high, a little bit out in front, a little bit off. You know, they were low, behind, etc. It almost felt like a pitcher in baseball who was nibbling the strike zone more than just attacking the zone and getting the ball over the plate. You know, I thought Levis, again, in the routes on air, I thought Levis was much better at getting the ball into the guy's hands than Cam Ward was. Some of that may be a timing thing that they work out the more he throws with these receivers. Some of it might be, and again, Cam's accuracy was questionable coming into this, that he may not be the most accurate passer in the NFL. Again, neither is Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson has won a lot of games. So keep that in mind. Cam had one play where the pocket broke down in 11 on 11. Cam, I think, thought he could have made some sort of Superman play. You know, the entire defensive line was around him, and Cam, it looked like he was back there, and he was going to shake him like Allen Iverson. And then he threw a pass over the middle of the field, and it was batted down by number 57, Curtis Jacobs, who apparently is a second-year linebacker I've never heard of out of Penn State. And that was a very dangerous decision and dangerous throw. And those are the kind of hero ball plays that scouts were worried about at Miami. And people would say, well, he didn't throw a lot of interceptions at Miami. But the scouts were saying some of the passes that Cam threw at Miami were very dangerous, even though they didn't get intercepted. They could have been intercepted. That was one of them. Again, go into week one, that's not going to be Curtis Jacobs who's out there. And he's also not going to be being rushed by the same guys he's being rushed by today. He's going to be rushed by all pros like Zach Allen and Nick Bonino. So keep that in mind. Again, it was one play, but it's the kind of thing where if Cam thinks he's going to get out there week one and start playing Superman ball, that's probably not going to work. Personally, I wish Cam was a little bit taller. You know, again, his lack of height, he's not short, but he's not tall for the position. That kind of stands out to me. Again, he does not look like Josh Allen out there at quarterback. He does not look like Joe Burrow out there. Certainly does not look like Tom Brady out there. You know, these big, tall quarterbacks. Cam is not that. Cam's a little bit bigger than Malik Willis. He's not bigger than Levis. Again, I wish he were a little bit taller. He's got, in my opinion, the size of a backup quarterback more so than the size of a starting quarterback. So not the end of the world, but I wish that he looked a little bit taller. And then all in all, as far as the day is concerned, he looked fine. He did not look like a fish out of water, which I have seen in the past. I watched Malik Willis when he first got drafted by the Titans out there at training camp. And I remember talking about Malik Willis, a third-round pick with first-round hype because of how much they talked about him. And I went out there and I watched Cam today. And when I saw Malik for the first time, I'm like, this guy cannot play in an NFL game right now. You could not put him out there and expect this guy. And everyone said, Jared, he'll learn. He's a rookie. You'll see. And Vrabel and Robinson were so arrogant to make him the backup. I don't know why they did that. He was not ready at that point in time. Cam did not look like that. Cam, again, did not look like a fish out of water. Some things that maybe he can work on, again, timing and getting the ball out, you know, and putting it right there in the guy's hands when you're throwing on air, that would be nice. He was mostly accurate in terms of completing passes in the 7-on-7 and in the 11-on-11 team period. Again, nothing sexy, nothing superstar, nothing crazy, nothing. But it was also the first day of open OTAs. So if you want to, you know, if you want the Cam Ward report, that's it. I thought he looked fine. He didn't look like it was too big for him. He wasn't throwing the ball all over the yard, but he certainly wasn't perfect. And there are some things that he can work on and some things that I'd like to see worked on. Again, kind of the way he operates at the line of scrimmage, because the way he operated, in my opinion, at Miami is not going to work in the NFL. But that's the report. Now, if you want to take about what Cam Ward looked like, Jared, give me a strong opinion of what Cam Ward looked like today. Give me some juice. Give me some. I don't have one. Because this wasn't the type of practice that allows me. Now, people that are just making crap up, they could probably do it. but it was not the type of practice that would allow me to have some sort of strong feeling one way or another, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get on the air and all of a sudden just say, Cam sucks because of the pass he threw that hit James Prochet in the hands, and I'm not going to say Cam is the best because of one throw he made outside the numbers to Io Manor. So, again, he was fine today for what I would have expected. Would have liked a little taller, good quick release, not totally accurate, but also not slinging the ball all over the place. He was fine. The end. That's all I got for you. If you wanted Jared, give me a strong opinion, the one thing I would say is he didn't necessarily wow me today, but it's also the first day of OTAs, and I'm not exactly sure that I was expecting to be wowed today by Cam Ward. So that is the Cam Ward report from practice today. He looked fine. Again, I know, not sexy, not polarizing, not something that's going to get people riled up, which half the people, if not more than half, that listen to this show, you listen because you want to get riled up. But that's what it looked like today out on the practice field. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Again, I wanted to start off with what the people probably wanted, which is, how did Cam Ward look? He looked fine. Now, the reps. Brian Callahan said something this morning that I took note of. Then I watched the reps today at practice. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
There's a whole lot of rotation going on at all positions. So there's guys that you might see out there with the ones or with the twos. It's really irrelevant at this point in time. All guys are rotating. They're all going through the process. There is no ones, twos, starters, not. All that stuff is what you see is going to be a rotation. And whatever you see today might be different tomorrow. So I wouldn't read too much into who goes when and why at this point. It's sort of irrelevant to our process. There's a plan in place for all the quarterbacks. So just so we don't have to do this every day, I'll save you guys the questioning and just understand that there's a time and a place for the guys to rotate, and that'll be what it is. And whoever's first or second or third doesn't really matter at this point. We're still teaching and getting ready to go compete in training camp. So with that, I'll let you guys go ahead.
You hear that, David Reed? Brian Callahan says the reps and who gets what reps, and that does not matter. Do you buy that?
No.
Now what? So today, Brian Callahan starts his press conference, and he had his press conference before practice. So he's going to, coaches like to have the press conference before practice because then they don't have to talk about what happened at practice. So if you have the press conference before practice, then you can answer whatever questions there are. But it's not like Cam threw 4 interceptions today, coach. What are you going to do about it? Because practice hasn't happened. It's great. Belichick was the master at that. So Callahan has the press conference, and he starts it before taking a question by saying, don't ask me about the reps. It doesn't matter. So one day it's going to be Johnny who's getting the first team reps. Then it's going to be Jimmy who's getting the first team reps. Everybody's getting the reps in. It's not the ones and the twos and the threes, but it's really just going to be, everybody mixing and matching. Sure. I'll give Callahan credit. That was the smart thing to do. That's what I would do if I was the head coach, is I would say, we're just mixing and matching everybody. There's no. When Amani Hooker's out there, that's the first team defense. When the first team offensive line is out there, that's the first team offense. That's just how it is. That's the reality. And today, Brandon Allen was the first quarterback in the team period for the Tennessee Titans. It went Brandon Allen 1, Cam Ward 2, Will Levis 3, Tim Boyle, who, by the way, sucks, 4. And then Cam got the most reps. So, for instance, earlier today when they went to team period in 11 on 11, Brandon Allen threw a pass that was complete, and then they ran the ball, and Sebastian Joseph Day got in the backfield and hit Tajay Spears. And then after that, here comes Cam Ward, and then he got 2 reps, and then Levis got a rep, and then Cam went back in there. So Cam got more reps than everybody else. But again, the first team reps went to Brandon Allen. And let me just say this. I have no problem with Brian Callahan doing that. With Brian Callahan, coming out and saying, don't worry about the reps. It doesn't matter, even though the reps always matter. These players always are keeping score, especially when it comes to rep count. But also the idea of starting Brandon Allen first with the first team and having Cam Ward come in there, that's what I would have done if I was the coach. I told you guys, the night that Cam Ward got drafted, if I was the coach, I would have gone to the podium, and you people would have had a very strong belief that Brandon Allen was going to be the starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans week 1 on the road at Denver. If I was the coach of the Titans, everybody, the team, the quarterbacks families, the media, the fans, everybody would be under the impression that crazy a-hole Jared Stillman, the head coach, he is strongly considering starting Brandon Allen to begin the season. Like, he's really seriously considering it. And I probably, as of right now, would need Cam Ward to prove to me that he's ready for the NFL and that he'd be ready to give himself and give me a chance in the Denver game. in order for him to start. But at the same time, I also know that what's best for the franchise, big picture, is the development of Cam Ward. And the only way that you get better is by getting reps. So Allen goes first. Ward goes the most. That's what I would do if I was the coach. And when I'm ready to name Cam Ward the starting quarterback, that's when Cam Ward's going to start getting more and more first-team reps. That's when, hey, Cam Ward's ready to be the starter. Okay, then we're going to go out there. Let's say that we see enough in OTAs. And there wasn't really enough that they did today for me to tell you who the best quarterback was or anything like that. But let's say that throughout the whole process of OTAs, in which the media sees probably 25% of. So of the 100%, again, I'm the coach, so I get to see everything, and I've got the tape to go over, and I'm talking with the other coaches. If after OTAs and the mandatory mini camp in June, if we're sitting there and we're saying, all right, Cam Ward's ready, like Cam is going to be the guy, then I would name Cam Ward the starting quarterback, and he'd be the first guy on every practice, every rep, everything. I would just do it. Probably would name him the starting quarterback the day before we open training camp. Just get it out of the way. But if not, I would be juggling at the same time, preparing Cam Ward, big picture, long term, but also knowing that Brandon Allen's going to be the starting quarterback against the Denver Broncos. And I think many people, just because of the names, got it built into their head that this was going to be when Callahan said, no, they're going to split reps. Everything's got to be earned. We're not just going to name a starter today. I think everybody was under the impression that that meant it was Ward versus Levis. And I kept saying, I think Brian Callahan, if his butt is on the line this year, and if he's going to try to develop Cam and Cam's not ready to go right away, I think you're going to see Brandon Allen out there ahead of Will Levis, because Brandon Allen is this year's Mason Rudolph. And at the end of last year, Brian Callahan rather have Mason Rudolph out there than have Will Levis out there. So when I watched today and I saw Brandon Allen go out there with the ones, I thought, holy crap, that's what I would do if I was the coach. I'm sure many of you are pissed about it. I'm sure you guys are, why is Brandon Allen out there? We don't need Brandon Allen out there. We don't. Again, I want to make sure Cam is ready for the NFL before I put him out there. I love junk food. You guys know that. I love cookies. I love pies. I love pizza. Well, guess what? When you take that pie out of the oven, when you take those cookies out of the oven, when you take that pizza out of the oven, you better make sure you give that pizza an opportunity to cool off. Because if you take a bite of it, it's going to burn your mouth. So it may take Cam 3 weeks to be ready. It may take Cam 5 weeks to be ready. Cam might be ready right away. I don't know, but I would have to make Cam prove it to me instead of just giving it to him because I picked him number one. But a lot of you people just want to give him the job because he was picked number one, and that's not how I operate. So I actually saw Brandon Allen out there with the ones today, and I know Callahan said, don't worry about it. It'll change. What it is today isn't what it'll be tomorrow. And again, I think that's bullcrap. But the way they're doing this at quarterback, that is the way that I would have done it. I would have had Brandon Allen with the ones. I would have had Cam, especially because now I can put Cam up against the second team defense. I would have had Cam going second, and I would have had Cam go the most. And Cam did go the most. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number if you want to weigh in. That's 615-737-1025. Plus, there was a familiar face that was out there as well at camp. We'll get to that coming up. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
Were you guys expecting to get Trayon back this early?
I wouldn't say he's back. I know he's participating in a limited fashion in some of the individual drills. That's part of his rehab process. He's in a good place. He's on schedule, and it's one of those things that you think about it like, oh, he's out there at practice and training camp, but really it's, training camp's not that far away. His rehab's going according to plan, but he will be involved in a limited basis in the early portions of practice, working on some of his rehab progression, which cutting and running and all those things are a part of it. He is not actually participating in practice at this moment. So happy with where he's at, excited. His progress has been really good, but he's not necessarily fully back at practice yet.
Okay, that was Brian Callahan this morning. So when I left for practice, Callahan again had his press conference before practice, and then the coordinators went today after practice. And I was like, I'm not going to worry about getting there on time for Callahan's press conference because they're going to take 20 minutes to get ready to actually practice anyway. So I tried to time it so that I would get to practice right as they were doing the stretching so that I would be ready to cover practice once they actually started practicing. I got there a little bit before the stretching, so I was a little disappointed about that. But I was running errands this morning and listening to the Callahan press conference, and I heard him answer that question about Trayon Burks. Trayon Burks, very big topic of discussion. Titan fans disgusted with Trayon Burks. They want him gone. They want him out of here. They want him. But then yesterday, there was a video on social media that was posted of Trayon Burks practicing. And it was like, whoa, wait a minute. Trayon Burks is practicing. What does that mean? And then Callahan was asked about it today, and he was like, hey. He's still in the recovery process. He's still not totally practicing. He's still not totally ready. And I thought, okay. But then I watched practice with my eyes. Burks looks fine. Now, Burks did not compete in the 7-on-7 or the 11-on-11, but as far as out there on the practice field doing the receiver individual drills, running, cutting, jumping, catching, he did it. And there's a reason this is important, because for all you Xavier Restrepo fans out there, if he's going to make the team, it's going to be at the expense of other wide receivers. Now, we already know that Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett, who was not there today, which I'm not happy about, by the way, but Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett, Chimere Dike, and Elic Eomanor are making the team, period. Now, if one of those guys, did you hear that, Reed?
A little bit louder for those in the back.
Okay, how about this?
That's good.
Okay, knock on wood. So assuming that somebody doesn't get hurt, knock on wood, those four make the team. At a maximum, you're going to have 7 receivers. You're probably more likely to have 6. So if that's the case, there's those 4. Then it's everybody else competing for 2 spots. And that includes somebody to return punts. So that could be James Prochet. That could be Mason Kinsey. They could be competing for that to return punts and kicks, etc. And then there's going to be the gunner position, the guy who runs down and tries to tackle the guy returning the punt. And Colton Dowell was out there on the football field. And remember, Colton Dowell became kind of an ace gunner for this team before he tore his ACL. Bryce Oliver last year did some of that. He's out there. And so when it comes to this kind of dynamic in the receiver room, if you're somebody that just thinks, oh, Xavier Restrepo, he's definitely going to make the team. Well, now there's another person in the room that's fighting for a spot, and that's Burks. And here's the one thing that Trayon Burks has on everybody outside of those 4 guys. Trayon Burks is guaranteed $2.6 million in cash this offseason. And before you poo-poo $2.6 million, just know you wanted to keep Mason Rudolph, but the Steelers offered him $4 million, and you'd rather pay Brandon Allen 1.7 or whatever it is. So that kind of money matters. So if you decide you're going to cut Trayon Burks, you're going to have to swallow the $2.6 million. And I'm not sure I see the Titans doing that. And then back to what Callahan said today, where Callahan was talking about, well, he's not fully ready. I heard that and thought, hey, this is going to be a slow, methodical process. before Burks is ready to truly get out there on the football field, and he may start the season on the PUP list. Because it sounded like Trayon Burks tore his ACL in November or whatever it was, and that's usually a 9-10 month recovery period, which would put him right around the start of the season. And instead, he's already out there running and jumping and cutting and catching and all of those things. I don't think he's going to be eligible for the PUP list. I think he's going to be out there at training camp, and he's going to be on the active roster at training camp. So the idea that you start with 5 receivers, I think it's probably going to be 6, but you start with 6 receivers, and it's Ridley, Lockett, Io Manor, DK, Van Jefferson, and then, again, somebody to return kicks or somebody to cover kicks or something like that, and then Burks is on PUP. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Trayon Burks is just going out there. Like, I think Burks is going to be on the team. He's making $2.6 million, and that would give him a step up on everybody else. 615-737-1025, and our phone lines, of course, are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam in Portland says, Jared saying, I wish Cam Ward was taller, hits the same way as Rob Riggle telling Will Ferrell to fix his face or I'll fix it for you. What exactly do you want Cam Ward to do? Stretch his spine, order some quarterback growth hormone off Amazon? Please tell me. Well, I'm not saying there's anything Cam Ward can do about it. I'm saying that seeing him in person for the first time in OTAs, and I'm looking at his size, I'm thinking, I wish you were a little bit bigger. Again, being 6'5" is not the most important thing at quarterback. This is not basketball. But again, I think we would all want a big, tall, strong quarterback. And just because Russell Wilson wasn't big and tall and strong doesn't mean that if we were putting together the quarterback that we would want our team to have, that we would want him to be big and tall. And again, I knew that Cam was 6'1", which is what I think he measured in at the combine, 6'1", 6'2". I knew he was 6'1". I knew he was 6'2", but I was just, hopeful that when I saw him out there on the football field, in the helmet, in the jersey, in the flesh, he'd look a little bit bigger, and he's a little on the smaller side. Not the end of the world, just kind of giving you my overall basic opinion, theory, whatever you want to call it, of what I saw of Cam Ward. There's nothing he can do about it, but as I watched him, even if he had a weak arm, there's nothing I could do about that. At that point, he kind of is what he is. But I do wish Cam Ward was just a little bit bigger. And it's okay. Not every player is perfect. In fact, almost every player is not perfect. Very few players do you see and just think, damn. Jeffrey Simmons was that way. First time you see him, damn. But he wasn't perfect. He had a torn ACL. Derrick Henry, first time you see him, damn. But he's not perfect. He's not one of these elusive catch the ball out of the backfield, Alvin Kamara type backs. Again, I wasn't expecting to go out there today to see Cam Ward and to think, damn, look at how big Cam Ward is. I'm just saying, I was hopeful that, maybe he looks a little bit bigger once he's in his, and he, I think he's a little bit on the smaller side. One texter says, give me the scorching hot brownies and the square from the very middle, no milk. Again, that is in reference to, I love cookies. I love cakes. I love it all. Pizza, brownies, love it. You know better. And I know better than to take the cookies right out of the oven and put your hand on them. You know better than that. And so when it comes to Cam Ward, I want the cookies to be ready before I put them out there. That's what I hate about ordering pizza at restaurants. You order pizza at a restaurant, as soon as you take a bite, as soon as they bring it out, you take a bite and it's going to burn your mouth. No, don't do that to your quarterback. Make sure your quarterback is ready before you put him out there. One texter says, Jared, they had Joe Rexrode on the Jocks Morning Show. That's the radio station in Alabama, Jocks, WJOX. They had on Greg McElroy and Cole Kublik. They had Joe on this morning. He sucks. I wish it was you instead. Wasn't Joe on the morning show this morning? So how was Joe doing a hit this morning on another morning show? Somebody smarter than me will have to figure that one out. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. We'll get to more of your phones. Plus, there was the Cam element of this. Now there's the Levis element of this, which I know people care about, even though I don't necessarily care about that. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Tune into 94.9 The Fan today as the Sounds take on Indianapolis. Pregame 5:20. First pitch 5:35. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks and by Family Leisure.
To the new quarterback room, and what have you seen tangibly out of his work with Jordan Palmer?
I've seen a lot of improvement. I really have. I think him making the decision to go put in the work down there with Jordan was really beneficial. I got a lot of respect for Jordan. I think he's got a good program. He knows what he's doing. It's good off-season work. I see a real improvement in his footwork and his base. His ability to control the football has improved. I've been really pleased with the work that he's put in. He's reacted really well to the room. Will's going into his third year, so he understands what being a professional quarterback is. He understands what that you're competing every day at that position to keep your job. I've been happy with Will. I've been pleased with his production and his work so far. He's had a good offseason.
That was Brian Callahan today. So Will Levis was out there on the practice field. Now, I will say this. I was not as tuned in to Will Levis as I was to Cam Ward, but I mean, again, anytime the quarterbacks are out there, that's usually what people pay attention to. Levis had a nice little check down and had a nice little bullet over the middle to James Prochet. I wrote good throw. Had a throw over the middle to Xavier Restrepo. He got in there and threw one to number 86. I don't even know who that is. And so, for the most part, had a nice completion to Jaquan Jackson. For the most part. And I know Levis ended the day on an interception, but Levis looked fine. It's hard for me to judge Will Levis right now because I thought one of the big disservices that Brian Callahan did to Will Levis last year and really did to himself was that he did not play Levis much in the preseason. And I understand in the NFL that you don't want to play guys in the preseason because they tackle and you don't want them to get hurt. And I got that. But at the same time, I think we need to all be honest and we all need to keep it real. And when it comes to Will Levis and what they did last year was they really didn't put him in a lot of situations where the pressure was real. And then, in my opinion, he succumbed to the pressure when it got real in the games. Well, today I'm watching him throw a check down to number 32, Bernard, whoever the hell that is. And I'm thinking to myself, well, there's nobody rushing him. So it's not like, oh no, he just sat back there and said, okay, 52 height, got the ball, looked around, drop it off. Well, that's never going to happen in a real game. And I understand that that's not the point of practice. That's the point of us trying to be able to evaluate these guys, which they don't really want us doing anyways at this point in the year. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's completely irresponsible to be evaluating guys because they're evaluating the guys, but there wasn't a lot to take away today from Will Levis. He looked fine. What I would tell Will Levis is this. I would tell Will Levis, wait for your next opportunity. I don't know when it's going to come because it looks like, and I believe this, the coaching staff is probably going to prefer Brandon Allen as the backup quarterback to Cam Ward over Will Levis. I don't know if Levis is going to get traded the way Malik got traded last year when a team needed a backup quarterback and said, we'll take Levis. I don't know if the Titans are going to keep him around and try to develop him to be the backup the way the Texans have with Davis Mills. Again, I don't know. That's their business of what they're planning to do, and I have no way of knowing what that is. But Levis will get another opportunity. Will he get another opportunity like he had last year? No. That's why I even asked him a question, around this time last year during a press conference about, do you look at the fact that, like, if you make it, you make $50 million a year, you get $200 million. And if you don't make it, like, you're probably going to be backup. And at the time he said yes. But that is the reality for Levis. He's probably going to get to play a lot in the preseason. And he'll probably get another opportunity at some point. And the cream always rises to the top of the NFL. And he's got talent. So, just keep working on that. And I just don't know if you can really trust Levis to fix the mental side of all of this. But good luck to him. 615-737-1025. One texter says, Ward is 1 inch shorter than McNair. It's that big of a difference. So I heard Bill Polian, during the draft process, compare watching Ward to watching McNair. And I really care what Bill Polian has to say because Bill Polian is a Hall of Fame general manager, a Hall of Fame executive, and you and I and Mel Kiper are not. At the same time, Polian did his homework on McNair. We all know that because the Carolina Panthers, the expansion franchise in 1995, had the number 1 overall pick in the draft, and they ended up taking Kerry Collins. So they did their work on both quarterbacks. The McNair I remember, and I didn't start watching football until McNair's 4th year, but the McNair I remember was much bigger and bulkier than Ward, and he played big. Now, I don't know if that means 6'2" or 6'3" or whatever, but Cam Ward, I don't think will ever look like Steve McNair. Now, Mike Vrabel was telling the story when the Titans retired their numbers about how he played a game against Steve McNair one time where Steve McNair lowered his shoulder and hit him in the chest, and he got up and thought he'd been popped by another linebacker. Cam Ward's never, I don't think, Cam Ward is ever going to be that big. But maybe coming out, McNair, of course, younger, maybe wasn't totally filled out. Maybe he looked exactly like Cam Ward. I don't know. But again, I saw Cam Ward on the field today, and I was like, I wish he was a little bit bigger. And that's okay. 615-737-1025 on the phone number. One texter says, a better analogy as far as where Cam Ward is an uncooked pizza. Well, I don't think he's an uncooked pizza. I think what he was in college, that was, when he wanted to come out after Washington State and accepted the invite to the East-West Shrine game and then got all the money to go to Miami and decided to go there. That's the uncooked pizza. I mean, Ward's ready to play in the NFL. Like, he'll play in the NFL this year, even if I was the coach. And I'm very cautious about bringing a young quarterback along. Cam Ward would still be playing in the NFL this year. I just don't know that he's ready to be thrown out there right away. It's just going to take some time. And you're just going to have to be patient with it. But just like the cookies that come right out of the oven, just like the pizza that comes right out of the oven, just like the brownies, the cakes, the pies, whatever, you're always better off waiting a little bit. And I would say this, if you take those hot cookies right out of the oven, and I will tell you that there is very little on this planet that is better than just a soft, warm, gooey cookie. But if you take one right out of the oven and you wait 5 minutes, it's usually peak right there where it's warm and gooey, but it's not going to burn you when you bite it. Would you rather wait 10 minutes or eat the cookie right as it comes out of the oven? My answer is wait the 10 minutes. That's how I feel about Cam Ward. Again, if he doesn't play week 1, you give it 4 or 5 weeks, what's the worst thing that happens? If you play him too soon, what's the worst thing that will happen? The worst thing that will happen is you're screwed and you've ruined a young quarterback. And if you ruin a young quarterback, well, then we might as well just take the next couple of years off, and I'll see you guys in 2028, and we'll start talking about the draft then. And I don't think anybody wants that. I know I don't want that. 615-737-1025 is the phone number on the program. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. There was one thing that bothered me from Titan OTAs that I do want to get into. But coming up next, yesterday I said we were going to learn about whether or not the people that make much, much, much bigger decisions than we do and make much, much, much more money than we do, if they were actually smart or not. And I think we're starting to see that. I'll explain. We'll get to it next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. PFL World Championship semifinals are Thursday, June 12th at Municipal Auditorium, and you can be there. Text in the keyword MATCH, M-A-T-C-H, to 615-737-1025 now to be entered to win a pair of VIP ringside tickets. Visit PFLMMA.com/schedule for more details. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. The SEC spring meetings are going on in Destin. Caroline texted me earlier today because Joe is down in Destin at the spring meetings. Was actually on the Paul Feinbaum show yesterday. Congratulations to Joe. But Caroline said she's got a hot take, and her hot take is that the spring meetings are actually better than the SEC football media days that we all know about that go on in July. Now, I personally absolutely hate SEC media days, so I'm not going to argue that whatsoever, but I'll say this. A lot more actually happens at the spring meetings than happens at SEC Media Day. SEC Media Day is just, here comes Mississippi State, here comes the coach, and now every media member across the Southeast can ask a question at some point to the Mississippi State coach or the 3 Mississippi State players that they bring with them, and then they do that for every team. Like, that's just a made-for-TV kind of try to get you excited about football event. The spring meetings, I mean, this is where we make real decisions as far as the SEC is concerned, and more importantly, college football. And the way I look at it is this. I look at college football and college sports as a whole because, again, as much as I love the basketball tournament and as excited as I am for the baseball tournament this weekend, let's not kid ourselves. It's all about football. And I kind of look at it like the 5 families of the mafia, right? There's the commission, and they all get together, and they all have their own turf, and they're all respectful in public of one another, and they, kiss each other on the cheek, mwah, mwah. But then behind the scenes inside, they're talking about taking each other out. There's the Corleone family, there's the Barzini family, there's the Tattaglia family, there's Cugno and Strachey. And in this case, it's the conferences. And the SEC, they're the godfather. They're the head of the 5 families. What the SEC decides at the end of the day is what goes. A couple years ago, the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the ACC formed an alliance. Remember that? And do you remember how the alliance ended? The SEC said, screw you, took Texas and Oklahoma, and then the Big Ten stabbed the Pac-12 in the back. Their greatest partners for over 60 years stabbed them in the back by taking USC, UCLA, and now the Pac-12 is the Pac-2. So the SEC makes decisions based upon the SEC, but they really also make the decisions for everybody else. And now the big talk at the meetings is what is going to happen with the college football playoff. Regardless, we're going to 16 teams. I don't think we need 16. I think most of you probably think we don't need 16, but get used to it. We're going to 16 teams. The Big Ten wants the 4-4-2-2 model, which is 4 teams from the Big Ten, 4 teams from the SEC, 2 teams from the ACC, 2 teams from the Big 12, and then the rest are at large, and like one group of 5 team, and then 3 at larges or whatever's left. And everybody thinks that's a bad idea, except for the Big Ten that wants to guarantee them 4 spots. Greg Sankey, at the beginning of the spring meetings, came out and said, the data says that 4-4-2-2 model, which the ACC and the Big 12 both absolutely detest. Greg Sankey says, we did the research. The research says that model actually hurts the SEC the most. But we'll see what the ADs and the presidents decide, because what's going to happen is the ADs, after they have these meetings, are going to go back to their cities. They're going to go back to Fayetteville. They're going to go back to Auburn. They're going to go back to Tuscaloosa. They're going to go back to Athens. They're going to go back to Knoxville. They're going to go back to Columbia, Missouri. And then they're going to tell the presidents what they think they should do. And the presidents are going to say, okay, whatever the AD says, that's probably what we're going to do. And I said yesterday, Greg Sankey knows that the 4-4-2-2 model is not beneficial to the SEC. He knows it because his group has done the research. So this was going to be the litmus test. If in these meetings, Greg Sankey, who is really a puppet for the university presidents, could Greg Sankey get through to the athletic directors that this model, the one that the Big Ten is trying to sell us on, is actually a bad model? And if he couldn't get through to the coaches and the athletic directors that this model was a bad model, then it would tell me that the guys making the decisions at the top in the SEC are stupid. And that Greg Sankey failed not in the decision that he made, but in the way he presented what I think is a non-binary, objective, and obvious answer, which is that the 4-4-2-2 model is not good for the SEC. So now there's a headline out at ESPN.com. Greg Sankey talks 5+11 CFP model with coaches, ruse timing. Quote, in a significant pivot from the highly publicized push for automatic qualifiers in the next iteration of the college football playoff, the SEC on Tuesday took a heightened interest in a 16-team model that would include the 5 highest-ranked conference champions and 11 at-large bids. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey said he talked with the league's football coaches at length about the alternative model. And apparently, the coaches seem to like that. Sankey said, quote, at the coaching level, the question is, why wouldn't that be fine? Why wouldn't we do that? We talked about 16 with them, so good conversation, not a destination, but the first time I've had the ability to really go in depth with the ideas with them. So here's what Sankey's doing. And I actually think this is really smart. Instead of going to the athletic directors, again, Sankey has all the data. And there's no doubt in my mind, Sankey has already talked to all 16 athletic directors at length about this. I almost wonder if Sankey thinks at the AD level he doesn't have the votes. And I can see how the ADs counting the money say, well, let's guarantee 4. Well, the data says we'll get 4 in every year. The data actually says some years we'll get 5, 6 in there. Most years we'll get 5, 6 in there. So why would we want to give the Big Ten 3 extra guaranteed spots when we don't have to? But I can see the AD saying, well, you know, some years if we have a bad year, we don't want to be like Alabama last year. And so instead of going to the ADs and trying to pitch them on the data, which I'm sure he's already done, he's gone to the coaches. The coaches, it's a very odd how this all works. The coaches in the SEC might have more juice at certain programs than the athletic directors do. If a very popular SEC coach comes out in public and says, I think we should do this, it's going to be hard for that athletic director to publicly go against his head coach. Now, in some instances, nobody cares what the Mississippi State coach thinks or what Eli Drinkwitz thinks. But can Danny White really come out and publicly go against what Josh Heupel's in favor of? I don't know if he can. So Sankey is going to the coaches. And he is playing the we're the best card with these coaches, saying, look, guys, we're the best. If we do this, we're going to get 7 teams into the college football playoff. If we go to the 4-4-2-2 model, we're guaranteeing spots to the Big Ten and guaranteeing spots to the ACC and guaranteeing spots to the Big 12. Who was the second best team in the Big 12 last year? I don't even remember. Did you want them in the playoff? Did you need them in the playoff? No. By the way, I think it was BYU. We don't need them in the playoff. They can get 1 team in there. How about that? And so it looks like the coaches seem to be in favor of going to, again, the 5 conference champions and then everybody else give me the best teams. But I don't know about the athletic directors. According to the ESPN story, quote, in the meeting room, sources told ESPN it appeared that the athletic directors were focused on 9 SEC games and a model with 4 automatic qualifiers. The coaches voiced strongly that they wanted a model with 5 automatic qualifiers and 11 at-larges with a preference to stay in an 8-game league schedule. The coaching perspective, as ESPN writes, hints at potential roadblocks for playoff expansion, as there's a sentiment that the other leagues wouldn't want the playoff to grow, especially all the way from 12 to 16, if the SEC didn't go to a 9-game conference schedule. So it sounds like Sankey knows he doesn't have the votes with the ADs, but he might be able to get through to the coaches. And it seems like that's the route he's trying to go. The ADs probably are looking straight at the money, saying, we need 4 teams every year. And then they get those extra play-in games, which they'll sell, and they'll make a bunch of money. And here we go, guaranteed money. I think Sankey's telling the coaches, you guys are good enough. You can play your way to 7. We'll be fine. So we shall see. But what I'm determined is whatever the SEC decides is what's going to happen. If the SEC decides 4-4-2-2, it'll be 4-4-2-2. If the SEC decides 5+11, it'll be 5+11. And right now, Sankey's trying to convince the league not to go 4-4-2-2. As I said yesterday, this will be the litmus test that tells us whether or not Sankey can get through to the stupidity of the conference. 615-737-1025. That's our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 here on the program. And there's one thing that I'll tell you about the SEC, that no matter what they say, I can tell you, they have proven to us they do not care about this. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 through the game.
But it seemed like yesterday the commissioner had some issues with the media.
Yeah, and look, I do have sympathy for him to some extent in terms of, first of all, people, I think, and he has made these statements before, like, I do work for people. And I think sometimes people think that he's this autonomous dictator. He's not. He works for the presidents, but of course the athletic directors have a strong saying. He mentioned that back and forth. And he was right that the SEC didn't need the 12. Now, it is more money for everyone, right? So it's a little bit disingenuous to me, but that's not inaccurate. But again, this to me is an opportunity for Greg Sankey and the SEC to say, Tony Petitti, Big Ten, no, this is not. We're not doing some gimmicky MLB network stuff. And this is the opportunity right now, and I hope they take the opportunity, but I'm not optimistic.
Yeah, and I understand it is a powerful coalition. And for Greg Sankey to move toward the Big Ten, it's like, why do if you cover NASCAR, why do you draft behind? Why is the guy in second place in better shape? Because he's going to get the propulsion to move ahead of the guy in first. But you'd rather be in business with the Big Ten than the other two. But it was still a questionable choice to some people watching.
Right, and of course, you brought up legislators making comments, things like that. I mean, look, this does anger the ACC and the Big 12, and to me, it's not worth, again, propping up the Big 10 unnecessarily for all of that backlash that you're going to get from a lot of different factions.
That was Joe on the Paul Feinbaum show, basically saying, SEC, do not get into bed with the Big 10. And I do like how Joe pointed out, Greg Sankey is not the end-all, be-all of college football. The SEC is the end-all and be-all of what ends up happening with college football. The SEC will decide. If you remember years ago, it ain't going to be the Big 10. If you remember years ago during COVID, the Big 10 decided we're not playing football. Now, they ended up reversing their stance, but the Big 10 said we're not playing football and we want everybody else to follow suit. And the SEC said, no. Now, Sankey works for the league presidents. And I don't know who amongst the league presidents has the strongest pull, but whoever that person is, that is the most important person in all of this. But here's the one thing we've got to recognize when it comes to the Southeastern Conference. And I've been watching a Netflix docuseries on the Cold War, where basically everybody had the nuclear warheads and the arms race and everything else, and why we fight all these proxy wars, because nobody's going to fight on American soil because they're going to get nuked. Nobody's going to fight on Russian soil Soviet soil because they're going to get nuked. So you fight all these proxy wars and everything else. And the SEC and the Big Ten right now are kind of the same way as far as the Cold War is concerned. The SEC is not worried about what's in the best interest of the game. The SEC could decide, hey, we're just going to go with the automatic qualifiers. We get one automatic bid, and the ACC gets an automatic bid, and the Big 12 gets an automatic bid, and the Big 10 gets an automatic bid, and the Group of 5 gets an automatic bid, and then let's go with 11 at-larges, and that's how it's going to be. And we may lose money on this, but we're going to do this for the good of the game. The SEC is not going to do that for the good of the game. Here's what the Big Ten wants, and this is what Joe was alluding to in that cut right there with Feinbaum. They want 4 automatic qualifiers. If they get 4 automatic qualifiers, what they're going to be able to do is they're going to be able to, on Championship Saturday, they're going to be able to have the Big Ten championship game. That'll be on Fox. That'll be at 7 o'clock at night, and they'll get a gajillion dollars for it. Then, earlier in the day, they will have the 3rd place team play the 6th place team. That will also get them a bunch of money. They'll put that on CBS. Then, what you'll also have, probably on Fox at noon, maybe on NBC, you will have the 4th place team play the 5th place team. And what's going to happen in the Big Ten is the winner of the conference championship game goes to the playoff. The loser of the conference championship game goes to the playoff. The winner of the 3-6 game goes to the playoff, and the winner of the 4-5 game goes to the playoff. So we originally, when it came to the playoff, we originally had 16 teams because that's what they're going to go. They're going to go to a 16-team model. But the Big Ten is trying to make their own inventory for their own playoff games. Well, is that in the best interest of the game? CBS and NBC, they'll pay for that. I mean, even in the last deal, NBC got a Big Ten championship game that originally belonged to Fox, and the Big Ten had to pay Fox money back because they gave away something that they didn't own. Well, this is a way to go get that money back and to get even more money. But I wouldn't say that that's in the best interest of college football. But I look at the SEC, which should value tradition. There's a big fight internally in the Big Ten. Ohio State doesn't like playing night games later in the year. Neither does Penn State, neither does Michigan, neither does Michigan State. They don't like playing night games late in the year because that's traditionally not what they do. Well, NBC has a night game every week, and NBC wants Ohio State and Michigan State and everybody else. So that's a problem they're going to have to fix. The league hates the fact that their best game with Fox goes at noon every week. Those schools hate it. But that's the TV window, so that's what they're going to do. The Big Ten doesn't care. They just want the money. The SEC, I think, should value their tradition. But at each passing opportunity, they say, no, we're going to do what's best for us over what's best for the game. When the conference realignment started in 2010, before the latest conference realignment, that was the Big Ten that pulled in Nebraska and Colorado went to the Pac-12. The SEC responded with A&M and Missouri, but again, they didn't start it. This has been all SEC. Texas, Oklahoma, that was the SEC. Expanded college football playoff, that was the SEC. And while the Big Ten, I think, has really done the actual nuking by ruining the Pac-12, ending the Rose Bowl, the meaningful outlook of the Rose Bowl and everything else, it was the SEC that started all of this. So if you're expecting the SEC to do what's in the best interest of the game or to do what's in the best interest of the sport, I'm here to tell you, that's not going to happen. Because the SEC has told us time and time again, Greg Sankey's threatened to pull the SEC out of the NCAA tournament for basketball. They only care about themselves. If you have a hope that anybody can save college sports, it's Notre Dame. They're the one school that's out there that doesn't have to go with the SEC or the Big Ten, that the SEC and the Big Ten know you can't really have college football without Notre Dame. If the SEC and the Big Ten decided to break away from everybody else and have their own playoff, AFC, NFC, the one school that it would not be legitimate if Notre Dame was not a part of that. So I look at Notre Dame as the one entity in all of this that can actually save the sport and do what's in the best interest of the game. But don't act like you're going to get that out of the minions that control Greg Sankey, because they've already decided it's not going to happen. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. I know that at OTAs, attendance is voluntary. Voluntary, Jared. Make sure you know that. But there was one in particular that was not spotted today at Titans OTAs that, well, I kind of got a problem with, and maybe you should too. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
potential grand jury indictment hanging over his head. It would seem
Sure.
that would be something that would affect a guy coming to work. What have you seen from him, and how does that have a bearing?
The things about Legerius is that when he's here and working, he's fantastic. He's all the things that we hope he would be. Certainly, when guys have off-field issues, he's not the first one. He won't be the last. There's a lot of guys that have things going on outside of the building that maybe aren't into public knowledge, or they're dealing with things with their families. There's a lot of things that happen that just like all of us, you have to separate your personal life and your work life, and be able to come to work and focus on the task at hand. I think he's done a good job of that. Certainly, anytime you have distractions off the field, you prefer not to have those. But he's done a good job of handling it and keeping, the work here the main thing, and dealing with the things off the field when he has to deal with them. But I would say that's not unique to anybody in particular. I think that happens to a lot more guys than people realize. Again, maybe not necessarily civil cases or court cases, but just life in general. It can be hard to separate sometimes, and I think he's done a good job of it.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan today being asked about Legerius Sneed, saying, hey, we would prefer that this not happen, but Legerius Sneed's done a great job of focusing and taking care of business. And look, all guys have issues in their personal lives. And yeah, but as I was talking to somebody today on the practice field, I think there is a difference between, Sneed's got an issue in his personal life that he's got to deal with, and Sneed, during the season, allegedly was involved in shooting up a car dealership that they didn't really need to have happen. There's kind of a difference between the two, right? Hey, guys are dealing with stuff off the field. So-and-so's mom got diagnosed with cancer. That is something that, hey, he's got to deal with that off the field. He and his family, it sucks for him. There's no way, no matter how much you say this is not a distraction, this shouldn't be a distraction, there's no way that guy can completely block that out. And it sucks. And there's nothing he did wrong. And there's nothing his family did wrong. And there's nothing the team could have done about it. And there's nothing. And it kind of sounded like Brian Callahan was equating Legerius Sneed's problem to that. Well, I have a little bit of an issue with that. But I also have an issue with the fact that Legerius Sneed was not out on the practice field today. He was not out there at OTAs, according to PK. Missing from Titans voluntary Phase 3 OTA, Tyler Lockett, Legerius Sneed, Kevin Zeitler, Devondre Sweat, Jeffrey Simmons. Now, I'll get to Simmons, Sweat, and Zeitler later, specifically Simmons and Sweat. But let's talk about Sneed for a second. If I were the Titans, and I have been very clear about this, I would wait for the commissioner to suspend Legerius Sneed via the personal conduct policy. And the second he suspends Sneed, I am releasing him and taking back all the guaranteed money. So it would save the Titans around $19 million in cash this year and $7.5 million that's guaranteed for next year. And I'd move on and I'd start over. If you're Legerius Sneed, there is nothing that you could ever do at this point to get that money back. And look, it's not my business as far as how much money he has or he doesn't have. But since all he gives a rat's ass about is the money anyways, decided, oh no, I care about winning. Send me to the Titans, Kansas City. I think it's pretty obvious it matters. If I'm Legerius Sneed, I need to be prepared for the commissioner to suspend me, and I need to be prepared for the Titans to want to cut me. If I'm Legerius Sneed, I need to be prepared for the fact that I'm probably going to have to write this alleged victim $1 million plus check. And let me say this. If a Titan player shot at me and I didn't die, you bet your ass I'd be suing too. Allegedly. So if you're Legerius Sneed, again, not to count his money, but if you get released with bad knees after a season in which you played 5 games and you weren't very good, And then during that season, you allegedly shot up a car dealership. You got problems. Because if the Titans release you, if the commissioner suspends you and the Titans release you, there's not another team in the league that's going to give you a big contract. They're going to give you a league minimum contract. You're going to make $1.2 million. That's it. Well, you're probably going to have to pay this alleged victim more than $1.2 million. The best thing that could happen to Sneed is that the commissioner doesn't suspend him. I don't think that's going to happen. The second best thing that Legerius Sneed could do for himself is to get his ass into the good graces of the Tennessee Titans. How do you get into the good graces of the team if they already resent you because you're never healthy and then you don't show up for OTAs? How do you get into their good graces? I mean, what's so important today when it comes to Legerius Sneed that he wasn't out there at the OTAs? What's so important that Legerius Sneed, who is one of the 8 captains in this transformative team building offseason the Titans are having, it's going to change them from the worst team in the league to the best team. Where was he today? What did he have going on? And I got to tell you, I thought it was kind of embarrassing for Brian Callahan to get up there today and for Brian Callahan to essentially be defending Legerius Sneed, saying, well, he's done a great job. Look, he's got things in his personal life he's got to worry about, but outside of that, he's been great. No, he has things in his personal life to worry about because he caused them. I just don't understand what the point of having this guy around is going to be. And then he doesn't show up for the voluntary work? Give me a break. This guy's a bad apple. And Callahan went and made him captain, one of the 8 captains. Why? Somebody explain that to me. And look, there may be something going on today because there are a handful of OTA days, and we're not invited for most of the OTA days. But if you're Legerius Sneed, again, don't you need to be aware of the fact that the media is going to be out there today? Aren't you aware of the fact that your big salary and the persona that you came in with and the juicy details of what you got in trouble for are absolutely newsworthy to everybody? Wouldn't you be there just so you could show face that you were there? And I have a hard time with that. And so today when I saw Legerius Sneed wasn't there, after I heard Callahan talk about how great Legerius Sneed has been doing, I thought, oh, God. What a joke. Just a joke. 615-737-1025. Ricky says he is not getting suspended. There are 0 criminal charges. Actually, Ricky, I have a copy of the police report. I'm going to doubt that you do. But I have a copy of the police report. And while there have not been there have been criminal charges, assault with a deadly weapon, the grand jury has to decide whether or not to indict. Now, earlier in all of this, I said, I've never heard of this, I've never heard of, I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna say I've never heard of grand juries indicting because obviously I have, but I just don't know enough about the process when it comes to the grand juries, because I'm like, so the grand jury has to hear this out in order for them to indict Sneed as opposed to just, he did it, let's charge him. And PK said that when there's a felony involved, it has to go to the grand jury. So you can tell me all you want about 0 criminal charges. No. The grand jury, they are going to convene a grand jury to hear testimony to then decide what to charge Legerius Sneed with. That is not the same as, hey, Legerius Sneed didn't get charged, the end. Which is what ended up happening to Deshaun Watson. The grand jury convened, they said no charges. Well, maybe that happens with Sneed, but based off the information that we know, I got a hard time believing that's what's going to happen. I mean, I talked to a cop this weekend. I was hanging out with a buddy of mine's a cop, and we were talking about this, and he was talking about people today are so stupid, when it comes to committing crimes. He goes, we'll have people that'll say things like, oh, no, I wasn't speeding at the time of the crash. And it's like the computer information inside the car tells us all we need to know. Well, between the surveillance videos and everything else, they're going to figure out what Legerius Sneed did or didn't do. If it was the other guy that did the driving and did the shooting, which is the only way I think Sneed can get out of this at all, is if both the guy did everything and Sneed said, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Well, they're going to figure that out. If Legerius Sneed called the alleged victim and tried to threaten him not to go to the police, as they are alleging happened, well, there's going to be a paper trail of that, and they're going to be able to get down to that. So, I mean, good luck to him. But again, where the hell was he today? Like, where was Legerius Sneed? He wasn't even there. And it's just such a joke. Kyle says, besides the money and the wasted third-round pick, I don't want to watch Pac-Man 2.0. Pac-Man was actually good. Pac-Man had all his problems off the field. Pac-Man still played for like 15 years in the league, even after he got in trouble. He was actually good. Sneed, and I know he was good in Kansas City, Sneed was not good last year. One texter says, it just feels like Callahan has no idea or sense of urgency. I'm not sure what it would look like in the offseason, but I don't think it would be how he's been cracking on and being all sarcastic and whatnot. I haven't heard Callahan be sarcastic. I mean, I think Callahan knows. Like, he's on the hot seat. I think he knows. But there is one thing that I noticed about Callahan today at practice that I do want to get to, that I understand why he's doing it. And I understand why he thinks it would be a good idea. But I actually think this is a bad idea. And we'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
talked a lot about building bonding with all these little games that you've had throughout the off-season program. For the guys who were here last year, and it's probably about a little over half the roster, how do you kind of burn away the bad taste from last year and just kind of get that out of everybody's mind, but yet still haven't learned from it?
I'll be honest with you, Terry, I don't really want to burn that taste out of our mouth. I want to, I feel it every day when I walk in here, and our players should too, the ones that were here, because we don't want to be in that position. We don't want to have the type of season we had last year. We're determined to make that look different. So I think part of that being in the back of our minds is a good thing. It's motivating in the sense that we don't want to repeat our mistakes. We don't want to repeat the things that lost us games, and we got to improve those things to put ourselves in better position to win. So I would say that burning that taste out is not something I necessarily want to do. I think it's a healthy thing to have that in the back of your mind and know, what the benchmark is and where exactly we have to get better. And I think guys done a good job of that so far.
That was Brian Callahan today. He says, I don't want to forget about what happened last year. We need to learn from what happened last year. And there was one observation that I had at OTAs today that kind of stood out. Last year in Brian Callahan's first year, when it was training camp, OTAs, etc. at practice, Callahan was very involved with the offense. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't involved with the offense today. He was calling the plays. He had the little walkie-talkie and was the one, saying into the helmet, what the play call was. So he's calling the plays and hands-on there. But during the 7-on-7 period, prior to the 7-on-7 period, when the quarterbacks were working with the receivers and the tight ends and everything else, it was Nick Holtz, the offensive coordinator, who was running the operation. It was Mike McCoy, the former head coach, who's now the senior offensive assistant, analyst, whatever, who was a part of that process. It was Bo Hardigree, the quarterback's coach. Callahan was off to the side, just kind of swinging his whistle around his finger while talking with Dave Ziegler, the assistant general manager, just over on the side in between the fields. And at one point during the individual period, Callahan was kind of moving around a little bit, keeping an eye on what was going on with the defensive players. And it actually kind of reminded me of the way Vrabel used to run practice. When Vrabel was the coach and during individuals, Vrabel would run over to each period. So the offensive line would be being coached by Coach Turbo, over down in the corner, and here'd come Vrabel, and Vrabel would see something, and he'd blow the whistle, say, Johnny, get your hands inside, go here, whatever, and then Vrabel would move on to the next side. And Callahan was doing a little bit of that, though he was not, blowing the whistle and stopping him and saying, no, do this instead, which is, the very hands-on approach of Vrabel. And this goes in line with what I have gathered, which is after last year, Brian Callahan committed to being more of a head coach than just being the offensive coach. I actually think that's a bad idea. Now, I think it's too late to change. And I think Callahan, when trying to sell returning as the head coach, said, I learned this year I can't just be in the offense. I need to be in the special teams meetings. I need to be in the defensive meetings. I actually think the opposite should be happening. I think Callahan should have fired Denard Wilson and fired Colt Anderson after last year, hired Bones Fossil to be the special teams coordinator, which he did, and hire somebody that's got a lot of experience to be the defensive coordinator to give that guy that side of the ball. And then Callahan, who's calling the plays on offense, needs to lock in and focus on the offensive side of the ball. Instead, it looks like he's trying to do the opposite. He's trying to be more hands-on with the whole team and more hands-off with the offense. And I don't like that idea. The hands-on offensive coaches, they farm out the defensive side of the ball. Andy Reid, they'll show Andy Reid when the Chiefs are on defense. And Andy is sitting down with the tablet and the Waffle House menu with Patrick Mahomes or whomever going over the plays because Steve Spagnuolo is running the defense. Vic Fangio in Philadelphia runs the defense. That's what should be happening here. But they get themselves all talked into, these young guys that have never done anything, about the potential, and we can be the Ravens because we hired the Ravens guy. The Ravens lost Mike McDonald, their defensive coordinator, to the Seahawks. They promoted within, and they did not promote Denard Wilson. They promoted Zach Orr, and they made him the defensive coordinator. And midway through the year, John Harbaugh, because this guy did not have the experience and they needed somebody more hands-on to help, went out, picked up the phone, and called Pawpaw Dean Pease and said, Dean, save us. The Titans have done none of that. And it's too late now. But I ultimately think that if you want to do this way, offensive guru coach, you farm out the defense. I thought that when they hired Callahan as the coach, and there was nothing that happened last year with Denard Wilson as the coordinator that made me think, oh, yeah, no, Denard can do this on his own. But nope, Callahan's going to try the exact opposite of what they probably should do. 615-737-1025. Chris is up next here on our program. Chris, thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Hi, Jared. Big fan.
Thank you.
I just want to give you a little generalization of what's going on with the legal proceedings for Sneed. They're probably, what they're going to do is called the direct presentment.
So I take it you're an attorney.
No. I'm a retired police officer and current narcotics investigator.
Oh, okay.
So what they'll do is they'll do a felony hearing. They'll present all the facts of the case. They'll present it to a judge. The judge will then determine whether the case will be heard by a grand jury for indictment. Now, you asked if he could have gotten arrested and had all that stuff done prior to all this. Sure, they could have done that. But it seems to me that they went in a different direction. In my opinion, it's kind of an easier route to go to. And a lot of district attorneys like to do it, especially with folks who come
All right,
and
Chris,
go.
you're kind of boring me. Do you think that Sneed's going to get in trouble or not?
If the facts of the case are what they are, I can't see why he wouldn't get indicted.
Okay. So, again, just based off of what seems like, I mean, when the attorney of the guy that's suing him says, we've got the video, and the video shows the gun coming out of the car and the car belonging to Legerius Sneed, it seems very difficult for me. Thank you, Chris. It seems very difficult for me to believe that Legerius Sneed's not getting in trouble. And I know Legerius Sneed's argument, because PK reported this, is, well, Legerius Sneed didn't do this. It was the other guy. So what you have to have is the other guy being the driver of the car and the other guy being the one who shot the gun. And it's somewhat hard for me to believe that would be the case. So, again, maybe Sneed gets in trouble. Maybe he doesn't. It's a terrible look. And he certainly has not done anything to dissuade anything that I would say that, oh, yeah, this guy, his head's in the right place. Even though Callahan tried to say, we all have problems in our personal lives, but he's done a great job since he's been here. That certainly did not help matters, in my opinion, in the court of public opinion. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. Cam Ward was out there for the first time today. He looked fine. Will Levis today was out there, and we saw Will Levis, the new and improved Will Levis. I'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. So today I was out at the practice field watching Cam Ward for the first time. Cam Ward looked fine. He had a throw that I thought was a really nice throw on the sideline to Elick Iomanor. He had a bunch of completions. He had a ball that hit James Prochet in the hands that he didn't catch. He had one that was a pass breakup by Gabe Jeudy-Lally that I thought would have been called interference in a game. He had one play where the pocket broke down and he tried to kind of out-juke guys and try to make a move, and he threw a ball in the middle of the field and it got batted down by some, Scarbini linebacker. It probably gets intercepted in a real game, which wasn't great. But for the most part, Cam Ward looked fine. Quick release, solid arm. Didn't look super special. That's okay on the first day. Didn't look bad either. And then there was Will Levis. And Will Levis met with the media, I believe, for the first time today since Will Levis, the Titans had picked Cam Ward in the draft. And we know what happened this offseason. The Titans fired the general manager. The head coach is on thin ice. The Titans spent the entire offseason telegraphing to the world that they were going to draft Cam Ward with the number 1 pick. They did it, and we know that Will Levis essentially got demoted. Now, Will Levis, for his part, after having been benched last year, went out to California to work with Jordan Palmer. And I'm here to tell you that in one OTA practice where they weren't wearing pads, where they didn't really do a whole lot, there wasn't really anything I saw from Will Levis that looked really good, and there wasn't really anything that looked really bad. But the difference between Cam Ward and Will Levis at this point in time is that I'm not sure I really care anymore about Will Levis. I don't know why the Titans were so persistent this offseason in claiming that they weren't shopping Will Levis. There was a rumor that came out around the combine that the Titans had been shopping Will Levis. Chad Brinker talked to Jim Wyatt on Titans Stationery and said, "We are not shopping Will Levis. We want everybody to know that." The Titans said before the draft that they had not shopped Will Levis. The Titans said after the draft that they had not shopped Will Levis. I don't understand what their grand plan is for Will Levis, but it doesn't matter to me because one guy plays quarterback in the NFL. This isn't like running back where you can have a room by committee. Even when Chris Johnson was the premier go-to back for the Tennessee Titans, they still had Lindell White scoring a bunch of goal line touchdowns. Even when they had Derrick Henry, they still relied on guys like Dontrell Hilliard and Jeremy McNichols to be the counterpunch to Henry. We know that you have at least 2 receivers, sometimes normally 3. You can rotate your tight ends in and out. You don't rotate out the quarterback. And I think the other thing that a lot of people don't seem to understand, but that I believe, is that if Cam Ward is not the starting quarterback, excuse me, if Cam Ward is not the starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans, then I believe it's going to be Brandon Allen, who got the first team reps today. Will Levis, as far as the 2025 Titans are concerned, I don't think he's really a factor. And I know quarterback is always something people want to talk about. And Levis, very polarizing figure, although most people, I think, are of the belief that he probably sucks. But I'm not sure Will Levis matters. Like when it comes to talking about what is really important for the Titans, and I am aware of how this works, right? In talk radio, it's always about the stars. It's always about the coach. It's always about the quarterback. In hockey, the goalie is a big part of the discussion, no matter what. We never have breakdowns on this show about third-line players on the Predators because it's not that important. Again, I don't care who the assistant general manager is. I care who the general manager is, so on and so forth. But at the same time, while understanding that Levis is a major character in all of this, he's just at this point in time not that important. Because I believe that Cam Ward is not competing for the starting job. Cam Ward is working, and the Titans are going to decide if playing him right away, starting him as the quarterback, would be beneficial or could hurt him. That will decide what they do with Ward. And if Ward's not the guy, I think by Brandon Allen getting the first reps today, that tells me the Titans view this as Brandon Allen as the second quarterback on this team. And again, I know they've been insistent on saying they're not trading Levis. I know they've been insistent on saying he's a young player and they want to develop him. And they have been very staunch in this narrative, or whatever you want to call it, that there's a real competition at quarterback. And that has led people to believe that it is Ward versus Levis. And I'm here to tell you, I don't think it is. Will Levis can do whatever he wants. He can say whatever he wants. The Titans can say whatever they want. You can believe whatever you want. But I think the whole Will Levis thing, I think it's kind of over. And I'm a little surprised that the Titans haven't moved Will Levis. Because no matter what, as long as he's on the team, it's going to be a talking point. If he plays in the preseason games instead of Tim Boyle, but it's Cam Ward goes out there and gets 2 series and now he's done. Brandon Allen goes out there and he gets a quarter and now he's done. And so with 4 minutes to go in the second quarter, in comes Levis, and then Levis finishes out the game. Well, it's going to be a more interesting preseason game, and we're all going to have opinions about it. We're all going to talk about it. But again, I don't think he's actually going to play football for the Titans in the real games this upcoming season. So I'm here to tell you that you can ask me, what did you think of Levis? How did he look? I thought Levis looked fine. I mean, again, going over my notes, Levis was very clearly today in the pecking order. And I know Brian Callahan has said, it doesn't matter when the guys go and what the rep count is. And it doesn't. Yes, it does. Levis threw a check down to somebody named Bernard, number 32. Threw a bullet over the middle to James Prochet. I wrote that was a good throw. Complete over the middle to Restrepo. Levis threw an incomplete pass to number 86 and then came right out, and Brandon Allen went back in there. And Levis threw a nice pass, completed to Jaquan Jackson, and then ended practice throwing an interception. But this time last year, Will Levis was what Cam Ward is now. He was the star. That was his opportunity. Regardless of why, that was his opportunity. He blew it. And now he has to wait for another opportunity. And when will that come? I don't know. I do know this. The cream rises to the top in the National Football League. So if Levis has improved out in California with Jordan Palmer, and if Levis is still going to have a good career, at some point, he may have to wait a while, but at some point it will happen. It happened for Steve Young, who had to wait a while after the disastrous period in Tampa before he got an opportunity in San Francisco. It's happened for Geno Smith, who did not work out with the Jets, was a backup in San Diego, a backup in New York with the Giants, and later a backup in Seattle before getting a shot and is now a starter. But not with this team. Not this year. So we'll keep an eye on Levis because, again, quarterback, it's fun. And it should make the preseason games more interesting to watch Will Levis out there in the third and fourth quarter of these games than if they put Tim Boyle out there. And Tim Boyle, I watched him. He sucked. It should be more fun with Levis. But as far as, Will Levis playing for the Tennessee Titans, Will Levis developing for the Tennessee Titans, that ship has sailed. That's over. And so maybe he sits on the bench and there's an injury and he comes in but it's not very likely. Again, I'm more worried about the guys who are actually going to play on the team this year. Like who's going to play corner opposite Jarvis Brownlee Jr.? Who's going to rush the passer this year? Who's going to play guard? Not having talks about the third quarterback because This time last year, he was the flavor of the month and was the world's greatest Mayo pitchman. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones on that, plus what Levis had to say after practice today. 615-737-1025. It's Stillman and Company on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
Yeah, I mean, haven't been a backup in a while. Don't plan on shifting my mindset at all, regardless of what the situation is. So I'm just gonna be ready to play quarterback whenever I'm in school.
That was Will Levis saying, hey, I'm not shifting my mindset here. It's been a long time since I've been the backup. And I got to tell you, somebody texted me and said, Jared, Will Levis, he's going to be the starter this year. I don't think Will Levis, based off the reps today, I don't think Will Levis is the backup quarterback right now. I think Brandon Allen is the backup quarterback. And I think the Titans are preparing for, hey, if we're not comfortable with Cam ready to go week 1 at Denver, or if Cam's not, because the Titans have only said it about 100 times. If we're not comfortable putting Cam out there, or Cam's not ready to go, or we want to bring Cam along slowly, I think it's going to be Brandon Allen, who is the starting quarterback of this football team instead of Will Levis. I said to somebody today, I said, if the cartel held your family hostage, and we know how ruthless the cartel can be, but if the cartel held your family hostage, and if the cartel said that, hey, we're going to do something about this if you don't win this game, and the choice was Levis or Brandon Allen at quarterback, I think you got a better shot to win the game with Brandon Allen than you do with Will Levis. And I would not be surprised if Brian Callahan felt the same way, simply because maybe he can get Brandon Allen to do what he tells him to do, whereas last year he tried to get Will Levis to do what he told him to do the whole year, and there was really nothing that he would do. I also think it's funny, Levis is like, yeah, I was working the whole time, but I thought last year sucked, and I had everything thrown at me, and okay, Levis. Phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025. Texter says they will trade Will Levis. They want to show him during the preseason in hopes that he shows enough promise to make someone interested in him. They will hype his progress to the moon and tell everybody how much they love him. Then he'll be traded when they drum up interest. I've seen dumber things happen. And I also don't think the Titans are the smartest organization in the league. But I'd be shocked if the Titans, even if Levis has a good preseason, I'd be shocked if the Titans were able to get anything in return that was better than the Joe Milton package. Remember, New England traded a Joe Milton, who was a 6th-round pick, and a 7th to Dallas for a 5th for Joe Milton. That's probably the going rate for Levis. And Levis was a better prospect, obviously, coming out than Joe Milton. But Levis got an opportunity last year, was an absolute failure. Whereas Joe Milton got one opportunity last year and actually looked pretty good. I'd be shocked, no matter how he plays during the preseason. I would be stunned if they got anything more than a 5th for him. One texter says, Jared, if Levis is here by the time the preseason starts, they will have to play him to advertise his current skills to sell him, giving other teams more than just last year's tape on him. Again, I wouldn't doubt the idea that the Titans are trying to change the narrative around Levis and will try to use the preseason to do that. But I think that's just a bunch of wasted time and a bunch of wasted reps. Because, for instance, today, Levis, I don't know exactly how many reps he got, but Levis got a lot of reps. Well, if you just want to get rid of Levis, and you do get rid of Levis, then those reps would go more to Brandon Allen or would go more to Cam Ward, and I'd rather have those guys getting the reps because they're more likely to play during the year than Will Levis. Now, I will say this, Tim Boyle got some reps, and Tim Boyle has no shot to make this team. So maybe they just say, hey, we need X amount of throws to come from the 4th quarterback and X amount of throws throughout camp in the preseason to come from the 3rd quarterback. And so that's what we'll give to Levis, and that's what we'll give to Boyle. And then that would be fine. We're not really taking reps away from Allen or taking reps away from Ward. But I don't think it's as, serious as we're going to pump Levis up this offseason. He's going to light it up in training camp, and then we're going to turn around and trade him and get a 3rd. Again, Jerry Jones has done some dumb things. A 4th for Trey Lance, who I think might have thrown 3 passes for Dallas over that time. Maybe that, fine. But I just don't see that happening with Levis. One texter says, nobody could play behind last year's offensive line, Jared. I agree with that. And I still think that Levis may have a career. If Will Levis were to ask me for advice, and I don't think he would, he probably should, but I don't think he would. I told this last year when I sat down with him at the Super Bowl, and I said, I could feel how anxious he was just sitting down with him after that ping pong event at the Super Bowl. I could just feel how tight he was, like how wound tight he was inside, to the point that, like, I know a 24-year-old with anxiety when I see it, and I wanted to be like, dude, it's legal here in Vegas. Let's go tackle some gummies. Chill you out a little bit. You know, Levis needs to be loosened up a little bit. And I don't think that's going to happen. That would have been my advice last year. My advice this year is this. Just keep working and go out there, and when you get an opportunity, play. And the better you play, the more likely you'll be to get an opportunity. If Malik could leave here and get an opportunity, you'll get an opportunity too. So go take advantage of it when you get it. But it's probably not going to happen this year. One texter says Levis will have about a 25% chance of being the scout team quarterback, or maybe even a safety on the scout team defense. I mean, I think Levis right now, again, the Titans keep saying we're not interested in trading him. I don't know what that really means, but I believe that as of right now, Cam Ward is the starting quarterback, or is going to be the starting quarterback at some point fairly early in the season. Brandon Allen's the backup. Tim Boyle is here as the fourth arm. I think eventually Tim Boyle is going to be a coach, and maybe a coach for this team. I don't know. And then I think when it comes to Levis, like I don't really know what he's here before, but all he can do is what they ask him to do. Now, we have seen Houston has done this where they drafted C.J. Stroud and they kept Davis Mills. And Davis Mills was the backup, but Case Keenum was there too. Maybe that's something the Titans are thinking out, but I don't know how big of a deal I think that is. One texter says, I'm a Niners fan and Brandon Allen sucks. He is a backup for a reason, but he isn't stupid with the football. Ding, 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 ding. So Will Levis sucks, and he is stupid with the football. So if the cartel held your family and you had to win the game, would you rather have Brandon Allen out there or Will Levis out there? And to the point of this texter, he isn't stupid with the football. That leads me to believe that the Titans would rather have Brandon Allen out there than Will Levis. Even though when Callahan said that, oh, no, we're going to do all of this and that really people thought that meant Ward versus Levis. And I'm thinking, no, it means Ward versus Ward. If Ward shows he's ready, Ward plays. If Ward shows that he's not ready, Brandon Allen plays. And then Cam Ward will play. And they'll probably work Cam Ward in there some, even when Brandon Allen is the quarterback. But I don't think this is about Levis. One texter says, Levis is a trade piece. They've devoted their souls to Cam Ward. Farms bought, planting crops. I'd say Levis has very likely improved. I personally think he could develop into a decent starter. The Titans can't develop quarterbacks. He regressed under Callahan, along with pretty much every other player on the team. I'm looking forward to seeing Levis and where he ends up. Levis fans need to quit clinging to him possibly starting or backing up here. His best interest is to go somewhere like the Steelers that are quarterback starved with a great head coach. If we have faith in him, let him go elsewhere and expose the Titans and Callahan. It's also the best business move right now. I support Ward now as well. I am a Levis fan, and I understand that the Titans are going to tighten. So let me ask you this question. Do you really think Levis is going to be good somewhere else? Again, cartel has your family. Do you really think he's going to be good somewhere else? I don't. 615-737-1025. Fitz will join us next. His reaction, Stillman and Company. 1025-1063. The game this week's best deal is 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. 312 Pizza Company serves the best pizza in town, as well as Chicago-style eats like Chicago dogs, Italian beef sandwiches, and more. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals to get half off a $30 gift card to 312 Pizza Company while supplies last. Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. I have been using Hiller for years, and they always get the job done. Hey, no one wants to deal with a plumbing, HVAC, or electrical emergency, especially not me. And most of the time, you do not know when that happens, what it will cost, if it will get fixed correctly, or if someone is trying to sell you something that you, in fact, do not need. That's why when you call Hiller, their experts are going to solve your problems, and they're going to solve them quickly. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. The price you're told is the price you'll actually pay, with no hidden fees and no surprises on your bill. So book online now by visiting happyhiller.com. That's happyhiller.com. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, Electrical, proud supporters, the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. .1025, the game is your racing station. Tune in this weekend for all the NASCAR races at the Nashville Super Speedway on the game, presented by Green Trees. Friday, the Rackley Roofing 200 at 7. Saturday, the Tennessee Lottery 250 at 6:30. And Sunday, the big one, the Cracker Barrel 400 at 6 o'clock. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at thegamenashville.com. Joined now by Jason Fitz, almost throwback. Jason Fitz, Fox Sports Radio and Yahoo Sports, joining us now on the program. Fitz, I was at practice today. It was an OTA for the Titans. Cam Ward was out there. He did not wow me, though he didn't do anything crazy either. I know it's only an OTA. How long in this process is it fair to go before Cam Ward needs to knock people's socks off?
That's a really good question because I want those flashes quick. I'm gonna be honest. Like the thing of it is, we have to approach this with some level of balance. If somebody came out and was just terrible at OTAs, I think that's worth talking about. If somebody comes out and they're spectacular at OTAs, I do think that's worth talking about. If they're just okay, it makes me a little bit nervous through the process of it. Like, I think there's sort of a gradual growth process here. And look, I've been square with you that I think Cam needs time to develop into what I hope eventually becomes a superstar quarterback for him. But you got to see flashes quick where it's like, man, that throw, the way the ball has left his hand on that, the way he did this, like those things should start to separate themselves, I think, fairly quickly. I don't think OTAs is the time, but man, like, you don't want to get 2 weeks into training camp and it's still just like, oh, you know, it's fine, it's whatever. Like, you got to see the flashes from your number one overall pick.
Fitz, how long in this process do we need to go? Like, Brandon Allen took the first team reps today, and Brian Callahan said, don't read into it. Guys are going to move around, everything else. How long on the process should it go before Cam Ward should be taking the first team reps? And what do you make of Brandon Allen kind of getting the first reps today?
Yeah, I think it's stupid. I mean, honestly, I think the thing that your quarterback needs right now is reps, and the thing that your quarterback needs is to get familiar with everything. And I just don't think that there's any value in having anybody not named Cam Ward take these snaps. Now, we had a disagreement on Cam Ward this week on Inside Coverage on Yahoo Sports because, you know, Charles Robinson is a believer that, hey, there's something to winning something. Go out there and win the job. And you know, it's fine if that's the logic you want to take. But I don't know. To me, the minute you take somebody number one overall to be your future, your franchise, your starting quarterback, we all know he's going to get the job anyway. Like, does anyone really believe there's a chance that if he were to be outplayed by Will Levis, that Will Levis is going to get to start this year? The answer is no. So if you're going to have a facade of a competition anyway, which is all it really is, then get your guy out on the field and let him take his reps from day one. I don't think you can give Cam Ward enough chances right now to touch the football. So every single time somebody else is touching the football, my real question is, why? Like, it's just that short-term, long-term, none of that helps with the only thing that matters. And I would argue that, like, I personally don't think I honestly don't give a damn if the Titans win 3 games this year. As long as Cam Ward looks like he is him, that is all that matters. So knowing that, I don't need anybody else taking any snaps.
The ESPN FPI rankings are out for the 2025 season. The Tennessee Titans are not last, Fitz. That belongs to the New Orleans Saints at minus 5.2. The Titans are 31st at minus 5.0. What do you make of that? You know ESPN and their analytics. You used to work there. 31st in the FPI at minus 5.0. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just echoes the sentiment that a lot of people have when I talk to them about the Titans. Like, people don't feel like the roster is just all that great, you know? So what you have is a roster that's sort of with a coaching staff that hasn't really proven themselves. And it's like, look, I get why everybody right now, if you can't be hopeful about your football team today, what the hell chance do you have? You know, so if I'm a Titans fan, I want to feel hopeful today. If I'm just an analyst looking at it, yeah, I think the Saints have the worst situation in the NFL this year. I think there's an opportunity for plenty of teams to be really bad. I think they're going to be just like last year. There are going to be several teams that win 3, 4, 5 games. I think there's a lot of bad teams in the league. But if right now, if you're just looking at the roster, like if you were the analogy I say to everybody, if you were not a fan and you walked up today and you picked up Madden, how many people are going to pick up Madden and then be like, oh, I want to be the Titans, that roster, that play? Like, who's that guy that everybody wants to play with? I think it's oversimplification, but this roster's okay. And it's going to take a couple of years to get to where they want to be. That's, again, why I think, you know, the analytics have no bias from ESPN. That's just where their numbers come out. But I think it speaks to, again, why if the Titans win 4 games this year, a lot of people won't be surprised. But if they win 4 games, and my God, Cam Ward looks like a world beater, then everything's going to feel just fine going into the offseason, because it's going to take more than 1 year to turn this team around.
Is it even possible to win 4 games and Cam Ward to look like a world beater?
That's a good question. I think it would take a lot of other things breaking the wrong way, you know. And so, yeah, I think that's tougher than ever. And if we're being honest, nothing can change the fact that the last 2 years we've seen a quarterback just absolutely change the franchise so quickly, and Jaden Daniels and CJ Stroud before that I'm not sure the world's particularly patient anymore to a fault. I think we can all agree on that. So, certainly, yeah, if the record is really 4-13, I think most people will be looking at year one of Cam kind of like they looked at year one of Bryce Young or year one of Caleb Williams and saying, oh, God, we got a problem. We got to figure out a way to do better.
Jason Fitz is with us on the program. So there was a story at ESPN, your former employer, about the great Mike Vrabel. And it talked about how Vrabel wasted no time in assembling his staff. And the thing that was important to Vrabel was loyalty. According to the ESPN story, quote, of his 28 assistants, 11 previously worked under him in Tennessee, most notably first-time defensive coordinator Terrell Williams, vice president of football operation and strategy John Stretch Stryker, and director of sports performance Frank Pirano. Vrabel focused on, according to ESPN, trust, loyalty, and those he believed would be committed to his plan on his coaching staff. I ask you this question because the problem around here at the end with Vrabel was his loyalty to his coaching staff. How much of a red flag is that for you? Because everybody seems to be red hot when it comes to the Patriots this upcoming season.
Yeah, I think the Patriots are currently, as we sit, the most overhyped team of the year coming into this one. And this article that you referenced, I saw it, and the loyalty thing bothered me because I think that at some point coaches need to be pushed a little bit. Like you need somebody that's not just going to be a yes man. You need people that are going to push your thought process a little bit. And I think, frankly, once the Titans got bad under Mike Vrabel, right or wrong, the national consensus became it was everybody else's fault. I don't know that I've seen a coach walk out of a situation as unscathed as Vrabel came out from the mindset of so many from the Titans. And the fact that they have had success without him now only feeds more people saying, well, look, I mean, what an idiotic move getting rid of Mike Vrabel. I think we do have to remember that while there were moments that Vrabel brilliantly made chicken salad out of chicken, you know what? I mean, I think he did a nice job at times in that job. I do think it's fair to question the end, the last couple of seasons of it. And I think it is fair to question he came out of a power struggle. Like no matter how we want to shape anything, he came out of a power struggle. So now all of a sudden there is absolutely no power struggle. He has full autonomy. He has absolute creative control. I don't know. It makes me a little bit nervous. And this presumption that, suddenly Vrabel walks in the door and everything's going to be fine and turned around. The fact that the Patriots were favorites in 11 of their games, according to Vegas, it's stunning. I still think the Patriots have a roster with some holes in it. They spend a ton of money, and we all know that when you spend a ton of money, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. They're all going to be learning new stuff. You got, frankly, Drake May is going to be learning Josh McDaniels' offense, which is notoriously difficult for quarterbacks to learn. Even the verbiage is really hard for guys to pick up. So all of this screams to me that there's going to be bumps in the road for the first half of the season. I think they'll be a better team by the back half, but I personally would be stunned if the Patriots meet the expectations they have right now. Like if the Patriots win 7 games, I think that's a big step forward. Congratulations. And that's about where they feel to me.
So apparently Stephon Diggs was not at today's voluntary OTAs. A video came out of him on a boat in which he was partying with a bunch of women and was flashed an unidentified pink substance. Mike Vrabel today stressed the importance of decision-making. What's the deal with Diggs? Diggs, not loved in Minnesota, shown the door, not loved in the end in Buffalo, not brought back in Houston. He's paid a bunch of money in New England. They put out a video and hyped up how big of a deal this was, and now he's on a boat with the pink substance. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think that Stephon Diggs is a pain in the butt. And, look at the personalities. At the end of the day, he walked all over Kirk Cousins when you talk to people around the Vikings organization. Okay, maybe Kirk just allows that to happen. Then he gets to Buffalo, and he walks all over Josh Allen. And, and then he gets to Houston, and he walks all over C.J. Stroud. I just don't know why. If I got a young quarterback in Drake May I'm trying to get to blow up, I know you need weapons around him. I might want a weapon around him that is not the type of personality that Stephon Diggs is. I cannot find people that know those situations that have positive things to say about the way he communicated with his coaches and his quarterbacks. And I just don't understand why I would bring that into the locker room. These are the sorts of things I think coaching ego believes, hey, we're going to get a talented player and we'll be able to fix him. But man, again, he let he was kicked out essentially of stable situations in the Vikings and the Bills. Those are two organizations that have their you-know-what together. And then, I mean, for the Texans, with all the injuries they dealt with at the end of the year and all the needs they have at wide receiver in general, they addressed it in the draft rather than even look at Stephon Diggs. So I think that there's something to that. I don't think the Vikings, the Bills, and the Houston Texans suddenly became idiots. I just think Stephon Diggs is a pain in the butt that's not worth the juice ain't worth the squeeze.
Last one for you. Jason Fitz is our guest on the program. Mason Rudolph is getting the first team reps with the Steelers. I watched Mason Rudolph last year, as did everybody else here. He absolutely blows. I think most people believe Aaron Rodgers will be the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but what is taking so long?
Yeah, I can't get a good answer on that. And, you know, C-Rob mentioned on our show this week that he believes that the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers already have a bit of an understanding. They all they have sort of a concept. They know what's going on, and that's the only way you can justify it in your mind, I think. But man, I don't know. And I mean, if we're being honest, okay, so let's say Aaron Rodgers comes back, and let's say even that he's playing at the same level that he played at in December of last year. Although I would question how much work he's been putting in on all that stuff while he's been on his media tour. But either way, let's say that he plays the way he played last year in December. I still think even with that effective December he had for the Jets, where he had his offensive coordinator of choice and his weapons that he knew incredibly well. If you take that same level of play and ability, this version of Aaron Rodgers is the third best quarterback in his own division. So what do the Steelers think is going to break here? Like the Jets, the Steelers going all in on this. And I would argue that the Jets last year had a better roster than the Steelers are going to have this year. And what did that get the Jets? Nothing. So even if Aaron Rodgers comes in, I think the problem, the mistake here everybody's making is they're talking about Aaron Rodgers for his body of work, not Aaron Rodgers who he is today. And Aaron Rodgers who he is today is not going to make the Steelers better than the Ravens. It's not going to make the Steelers better offensively than the Bengals. Like if the Bengals can get even a fraction of a clue of how to play any defense this year, both of those teams are going to absolutely run over the Steelers. The Steelers are going to go all in on this 1 year sort of attempt to get Aaron Rodgers to get them to relevance. I don't think it's going to work, but they're not going to lose enough games to get the top quarterback next year in the draft. They're stuck in quarterback purgatory. I think the Steelers are constantly a 9-win team because they can't get a quarterback that actually can compete in the modern AFC.
Jason Fitz, as always on our program. Fitz, great stuff. We'll talk soon.
Appreciate you, brother. Have a great week.
Yep, Jason Fitz here on the show. Hey, tune into 102.5 The Game this Friday for your NCAA baseball regional coverage as the number 1 seeded Vanderbilt Commodores take on 4th seeded Wright State at Hawkins Field Friday, May 30th. First pitch approximately 5 o'clock Central. Coverage will also be on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. We will be live out at Vanderbilt on Friday for that. Stillman and Company coming up next. Speaking of the Steelers, a Steelers legend has made a statement. And I got to say, I don't totally disagree with it. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
What do you think about possibly Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback?
That's a joke. He shouldn't. That is just, to me, is a joke. What are you going to bring him in for 1 year? Are you kidding me? I mean,
that's not the Steelers' way, right?
No, man. That guy needs to stay in California and go, somewhere and chew on bark and whisper to the gods out there.
100%. These guys on the show, Mr. Bradshaw, know I'm not a fan of his. We've been around each other personally, and he was not a kind person.
He does not. I had to go over and introduce myself to him. He's not. I had to go, hey, Aaron, I'm Terry Bradshaw. I know he knows me, but I just felt like I better tell him who I am. Yeah. And not, you walk in there and you get in his presence and you feel like it's going to start snowing. So. Oh, hold it. Roger, that was supposed to be something. There you go.
Dan Hanson, do you agree with that move that they go with Rodgers for the Steelers?
He is not a guy you would want for a neighbor. But here in Chicago, I watched him for 15 years make play after play to win football games. And from what I understand, Aaron Rodgers' agent is basically telling the league it's just a matter of time. Aaron's kind of cleaning up some personal matters. He is going to be a part of the Steelers. Now, whether you like it or not, to me, again,
I heard the same thing, Dan. I just don't want to
as a mercenary player, you could see him in Arizona or Tampa or something like that.
Well, I hope the first thing he cleans up is his damn attitude.
Yeah, Dan. Hey, Dan.
There you go. That was Terry Bradshaw. I don't know. Reed, do you have any idea who that was on the phone that was in that? That was on 103.7 The Buzz in Pittsburgh on their morning show, the Morning Mayhem show.
I just have a hard time believing there's someone in Pittsburgh with that accent. You don't even have that accent on the radio here in Nashville, Tennessee. That's from way back in the sticks.
Terry Bradshaw, I've been around Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think Aaron Rodgers is a good man.
He's a jerk. I don't like him.
I mean, he goes out there and he lied about the COVID vaccine, Terry Bradshaw, and I don't know what to do. Anyway, let me say this. I don't understand what's going on with Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers either. But I've always said this. When you're an all-time great for a team, what you say matters. And I know Terry Bradshaw has said things over the years that have irked the Steelers. He said a couple of years ago that Mike Tomlin wasn't really a coach. He was more of a cheerleader, and that pissed off Tomlin pretty bad, and Tomlin made the joke that he was a Hollywood Henderson fan. But at the same time, here's the thing I guess I just don't get. Aaron Rodgers is coming to a new team that runs a similar offense to what he ran in Green Bay, because we know Arthur Smith is the head coach and Matt LaFleur and Arthur Smith work together. So we know that shouldn't be the end of the world. But there's new receivers. DK Metcalf is going to be out there. He's never thrown to him, as far as on the same team. He's going to have to move to Pittsburgh during the season to get acclimated and all of that. And I understand waiting until the draft. Okay, let me make sure that you don't draft a quarterback to take my spot. But what are they doing now? Just waiting on Aaron Rodgers. At some point, if you're the Steelers, do you not tell Aaron Rodgers, brother, get here today. You're the quarterback. This isn't Green Bay where he's been with the same team and the same routine for 20 years. You need to be here. What are we doing? And I keep thinking about this. I don't know if Ryan Tannehill is done or not. There was a report that came out that said that the Vikings had reached out to Ryan Tannehill about potentially being the starting quarterback there. The backup quarterback there to J.J. McCarthy. If I'm the Steelers, at what point do I say, because all the good quarterbacks are gone. You can't get a quarterback in free agency other than Rodgers, who everybody thinks you can't draft a quarterback. If I'm the Steelers, at what point do I just go, okay, fine, let's just go sign Ryan Tannehill? The mandatory minicamp? The start a training camp? Like, when, if you're the Steelers? This is a proud organization. It's not like Aaron had a bunch of choices, by the way, as to where he wanted to go. He had a couple. When do you do something about it? Or do you have to do something about it? Or do you just say, you know what? We're all going to be all in on Aaron, and whatever ends up happening happens, and we'll go from there. Because I just struggle with the idea of my team being held hostage by Aaron Rodgers when Aaron Rodgers just got fired from his last job. They flew him out to New York to tell him they were firing him, which is pretty crazy. Tom says he thinks it might have been Dan Hampton from the Chicago Bears in the 80s. You know, look, I'm not here to tell sports people, you know, what to do or not to do, and I'm not stupid enough to think that only people listen to sports radio and only listen to this show. But at the same time, I'm kind of wondering, like, if you're the Brew at the Zoo crew or whatever it is, that morning mayhem show on that Pittsburgh station, why is Terry Bradshaw going on that station? Like, why is Terry Bradshaw not going on the sports station? And Dan Hampton, why would they not be going on the sports station? Whatever. That's their business, not mine. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. Coming up next, there were some absences today at Titans voluntary OTAs. And normally I'm not sure I'd care. But there's a specific reason that I care about these absences. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 through the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. The Titans had OTAs today, the first Phase 3 OTA that was open to the media. And I was out there on the practice field. And I was making jokes today along with some of the other media people. One guy dropped a pass today, and I got out there and I said, -2 points. And then one guy caught a pass, and I said, +2 points. And again, last week, I made a lot of fun of Brian Callahan's offseason of team building and competitive spirit and made-up point system and the 4-H's and a lot of people seem to get upset about it. Oh, Jared, he's just trying to do something differently. This is about accountability. This is about teamwork. This is about leadership. It sounded like one of those corporate retreats that people have to go on, and the team building activities that you have to do on that corporate retreat, not something that's going to build up an NFL team. And I know TD was on the show and he was talking about, well, it's about, guys being accountable to each other more so than it is anything else. And I said, that's fine. Brian Callahan doesn't have the nuts to fire coaches. He doesn't have, the cojones to hold people accountable. So he came up with some weird screwy point system. And this is going to be the transformative change that is going to take the Titans from the worst team in the NFL to the top, right? Sounds kind of stupid. So I was out there today, and I said, where's Jeffrey Simmons? And the media group, the people next to me turned around and they said, he's not here today. I said, wait a minute, what? Jeffrey Simmons is not here today? And I know, OTAs, as every coach who does not want to be fined by the league because the league doesn't want to hear about it from the union, every coach will say that it is voluntary to be there for OTAs. And I also am not one to sit there and say that you got to be at every voluntary practice. But if you're going to have this constant competition throughout the entire offseason, if you're going to try to build leaders based off of this competition, if you're going to get up there in front of everybody and talk about dividing the team into 8 equal teams that are mixed offense, defense, special teams, and that we're going to build leaders out of it, and that we are going to set the tempo for what this organization is going to be, and that we're going to hold people accountable, and that we're going to push other people, and that we're going to, well, then don't you need the people that are supposed to be the leaders of the team to be there? No Jeffrey Simmons. I assume Jeffrey Simmons is one of the 8 team captains. No Tavondre Sweat, who is the assistant captain of Tony Pollard's team. He was not there today. No Legerius Sneed, who I have been informed is a team captain. Not even Kevin Zeitler, the veteran guard the Titans signed in the offseason. He wasn't there today. So somebody explain something to me. How are the Titans going to develop all of these great leaders and transform their team this offseason with this great competitive process if Jeffrey Simmons is off doing his own thing? What happened to, we need to build and develop leaders this season? So how is Jeffrey Simmons and how is Tavondre Sweat and how is Legerius Sneed? How are they supposed to earn points for their team? How are they supposed to lead their team? You tell me, you explain this to me, because apparently I think this is all stupid anyways, but I'm obviously not smart enough to understand how the Titans can have this competitive offseason team building program and then have the guys that either are supposedly the leaders of their team or the guy that they want to be a leader of their team not be there. And it goes back to what I truly believe, which is this is just such a Mickey Mouse operation that lacks legitimate, serious football minds. And I mean that with all due respect to Brian Callahan. But when he got up there last week and he tried to talk about his new system because he thought long and hard about it, and he sold it to the local press with this idea that this was going to be transformative, that this was going to be about accountability and building leaders. And I don't think, by the way, that you build leaders. I think leadership is a talent. I think it can be developed. I do not think that somebody who is not a leader and does not have the ability to be a leader can be made a leader, which is what I think of Simmons. But I heard all that gobbledygook last week, and I heard that, well, they got to try something. And because Callahan can't fire coaches, except for the special teams coach, which he had to do kicking and screaming and didn't want to do, and because Callahan can't hold these guys accountable, he made up some stupid formula and acted like Albert Einstein, saying, oh, here's this new, look at the board, look at all this, the way that we're going to keep up these. And then Simmons doesn't show up. Sweat doesn't show up. Sneed, who's a captain of one of these teams, doesn't show up. Give me a freaking break. They're not taking it seriously. And I knew they wouldn't take it seriously. I probably shouldn't say this, but I went down last week. My roommate in college is the first base coach of the Scranton AAA team. They played the Sounds last week. So we were out there at First Horizon Park on Thursday. So I went down to the clubhouse, after the show was over, before first pitch, and I just went to go say hey to my buddy. And, I was talking to some of the coaches. And my buddy asked me, he said, what'd you talk about on the show today? And I said, you guys got to hear this. I said, they got this new system that the Titans are incorporating, trying to get guys to be more accountable. They say this is going to keep them from jumping off sides this season. This is going to keep them from turning the ball over this season. This is going to keep them. They've got this point system. So if you throw an interception, it's -3 points. If you intercept it, it's +3 points. And these guys, again, AAA baseball coaches for the Yankees, sat there and laughed when I told them about how stupid I thought this was. These are millionaire athletes. And you're going to say, okay, guys, we're going to have some icebreakers here, and we're going to get to know each other, and we're going to get to do this, and we're going to get to do that, and we're going to. And some of you people bought this crap last week. I didn't, but some of you did. I think most of the people in the local media bought it. And we're like, hey, this is going to hold them accountable this season. You're not going to see the same old bull crap you saw last year because they're going to be held accountable to their teammates. Really? Like, this is going to be what gets them to get off the pot? And then on the first open day of competition to the media, and if you're a player and you're trying to be a leader, or if you're a player and you are a leader, you should be aware of the optics of what is open to the media and what's not. On the first available open day to the media, Jeffrey Simmons, nowhere to be found. T'Vondre Sweat, nowhere to be found. Legerius Sneed, not there. They're not taking this seriously. You don't have any leaders. You've propped up Simmons. He's got to be one of these 8 captains, and he's not even there. This thing is such a joke. And again, for a lot of these guys, it's voluntary. That's their business if they go or if they don't. I think if you are a leader, you probably need to be there. But this is the first open OTA to the media, the first real open OTA. And this was the new offseason platform that Brian Callahan introduced. That, I'm telling you, people in that building think this is like some sort of, real accountability and leadership building exercise. Like, they don't think this is a joke like I do, and like the Yankee AAA coaches apparently did. And yet on the first day, there's no Jeffrey Simmons. There's no T'Vondre Sweat, who's an assistant captain. There's no Legerius Sneed. It's one day. And I already get the idea that, the players think this is stupid too. Sorry, too busy doing my own thing today. Going to Disney World. 615-737-1025. We'll get your reaction to that. 615-737-1025. Plus, Brian Callahan was asked a question today that at some point he probably knew was going to come up. And I thought his answer to it was awful. Just awful and kind of embarrassing. We'll get to that coming up next. Dylan in Antioch says no Jared versus Joe today. Joe is in Destin today at the SEC spring meetings or whatever. So Jared versus Joe will be back next week. But Jared versus Joe is presented weekly by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville and First Horizon Bank. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. So traditionally we'll have Joe on, but he's at the SEC meeting, so that'll be next week. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
What's Jeff's offseason been like to this point?
It's been pretty consistent for Jeff, I think. Again, whether you see him every day here or not, there's one person on this team, probably more than anybody, I never worry about being ready to play on Sunday, and that's Jeff. So been pleased with where he's at. He's working. I know he's ready to roll. So that's pretty all I can say to that. You'll find out.
The answer to that is no, he was not. I mean, I love how Brian Callahan's like, whether or not Jeff Simmons is here, the person I'm never worried about is Jeff Simmons. Really? That's the person you're never worried about? You do realize that, and this is a problem the Titans have, because, again, Callahan, he just cannot call anybody out. It's kind of disappointing. Jeffrey Simmons last year had 5 sacks. And if you ask him about the fact that he had 5 sacks, he'll go off and bitch about how the media doesn't give him enough credit because he got double teamed so much last year and blah, 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 blah. I mean, this idea that, I don't have to worry about Jeff Simmons, you're treating him like Derrick Henry. He's not Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry never has to go to OTAs. And I know Derrick Henry will be okay when the start of the season comes around. But if I'm the coach and I'm doing what Brian Callahan is doing, which is telling everybody that I spent so much time this offseason thinking long and hard about what we had to do in order to fix the problems of last year. And this leadership development, team building training is what we need. Well, then as the coach, I would be sitting down with Derrick Henry saying, Derrick, we need you here. Like, I know you want to train on your own. I know you train well on your own. I know, look, I'm not worried about you, but I need you, Derrick Henry, here to lead this team. And I bet you Derrick Henry would say, absolutely, coach. Simmons is not here. They ask, hey, how's his offseason? Well, I never worry about Simmons. I worry about Simmons. I think Simmons thinks his poop doesn't smell. I think he's too big for his britches. I think he thinks he's the man. And I'll tell you how I know I think he's the man. He's got his own logo. This J.S. Jeffrey Simmons logo. And he wears that T-shirt and chain, with the Jeffrey Simmons logo. He thinks he's Tom Brady. He had 5 sacks last year. And here's another example of something embarrassing I thought Brian Callahan said today. Paul asked him about Legerius Sneed. And again, if you're not up to date on what's the latest with Legerius Sneed, apparently Legerius Sneed is facing both a civil lawsuit and potential grand jury hearing surrounding his role in an alleged shooting at a car dealership during the season last year outside of Dallas, Texas. Here's what Brian Callahan said today about Legerius Sneed.
Potential grand jury indictment hanging over his head. It would seem that would be something that would affect the guy coming to work. What have you seen from him, and how does that have a bearing?
The things about Legerius is that when he's here and working, he's fantastic. He's all the things that we hope he would be. Certainly when guys have off-field issues, he's not the first one. He won't be the last. There's a lot of guys that have things going on outside of the building that maybe aren't into public knowledge, or they're dealing with things with their families. There's a lot of things that happen that just like all of us, you have to separate your personal life and your work life, and be able to come to work and focus on the task at hand. I think he's done a good job of that. Certainly anytime you have distractions off the field, you prefer not to have those. But he's done a good job of handling it and keeping, the work here the main thing, and dealing with the things off the field when he has to deal with them. But I would say that's not unique to anybody in particular. I think that happens to a lot more guys than people realize. Again, maybe not necessarily civil cases or court cases, but just life in general. It can be hard to separate sometimes, and I think he's done a good job of it.
Okay, so right then and there, he just said that we need to give Legerius Sneed an award for how well he's handled this distraction in his life that is his own doing. And I heard that today, and I thought, God, what a freaking wuss on Callahan's part. And again, I like Callahan. I think Callahan's a good guy. I think Callahan's a good man. I'm rooting for Callahan. I am betting against him because I don't think he's got the bone in his body that is required to be a good coach. I don't think he's got that in him where he can push back. Koharski asks him about, hey, Sneed's handling the grand jury stuff. Again, anything related to Legerius Sneed's legal troubles, every coach, every player, every person there should say, hey, that's above my pay grade. So I understand not addressing that. But there's also the reality that this was a self-inflicted problem caused by Legerius Sneed during the season last year when Brian Callahan was coaching for his job. And Brian Callahan's not going to even show a hint of disappointment. Not one hint of disappointment. Like, I heard that, and I'm like, this is the opportunity for Brian Callahan, again, not to make a statement about Legerius Sneed's a real a-hole because he went out during the season in Dallas when he told us he was going to be rehabbing and he's shooting up car dealerships and we're not happy about it. But this is his opportunity to say something like, we need all the guys around here to really make good decisions. We need the guys around here to pull the rope in the right direction. And we've had some talks about this, and I think Legerius' head this year is in the right place. Something like that. Show me your disappointment. Because when I heard about all this, when this came out, and I saw that it was on December 6th or whatever, and I said, wait a minute, this was 2 days before they played Jacksonville at home. The hell's he doing out there shooting up car dealerships, allegedly? I was disappointed. I was offended. I was angry, and my job wasn't hanging in the balance. Boy, I'll tell you, I was proud how Ray Lewis overcame the adversity that he caused for himself. Let's compare this with Vrabel. This was Vrabel today. Stephon Diggs, there's a video online. Stephon Diggs partying on a boat. Stephon Diggs has some sort of pink substance many people assume is cocaine on the boat. Again, I have no idea. I've never done cocaine in my life, so I have no idea what color it is. Well, I mean, I know it's white. I know you snort it, but I don't know pink bags, yellow bags, green bags. I have no idea. But apparently that's what most people seem to think it is. This was Vrabel today when asked about Stephon Diggs. And you tell me if this is the same tone of disappointment that Brian, or the lack of disappointment, I should say, that Brian Callahan had.
Stephon Diggs has gotten a lot of traction in the last 24 hours or so. He's on a boat having a good time, but the question comes in as to a certain substance that people are guessing what is and isn't. Is this something that the team has to look into?
Well, it's something that we're aware of, and obviously we want to make great decisions on and off the field. And we're hoping that with our time here on the field today, and that when we don't have a script and we're on the call periods, that we're making great decisions. And so the message will be the same for all our players, that we're trying to make great decisions, and any conversations that I've had with Stephon will remain between him and I and the club.
Have you talked to him since the video?
I talk to our players every single day, the ones that are here and the ones that aren't.
Are you expecting him to practice today, Mike?
Not if he's not here.
So he's not here.
You guys will find out in a minute. But no, again.
He was here last week. According to a video.
Everything that we're going to do, Karen, is we're going to coach the guys that show up at 8, and the ones that say, hey, I got a situation, we'll be here at 8:05. We'll coach those as well. This is a voluntary part of our off-season program. And every player that's not here, which there aren't many, have been in communication with me and their position coaches.
I was just going to ask, based on what you've seen from the times you've been around.
Kind of tell from this that Vrabel's pissed. We stress to the guy to make good decisions. And today at practice, we need to make good decisions. And we need to, you can tell Vrabel's pissed at Stephon Diggs. And I've talked to him, and anything that's said between him and I will stay between him and I. Is he going to be out there today? Is he practicing today? Well, he can't practice if he's not here. So is he here today? You'll see. But no, he's not. Again, Brian Callahan's acting like we should give Legerius Sneed credit for how hard he's worked since he's been here with this distraction that he has in his life. I'm pissed about the distraction because, again, his teammates are out there fighting for their jobs. His coaches last year were coaching for their jobs. I guarantee you on December 6th, Brian Callahan was not sure whether or not he was coming back as the Titans coach. These guys are fighting for their careers. And he's off allegedly shooting up a car dealership. And given the opportunity, again, given the opportunity to say something about it, Brian Callahan just tells us how great things are going with Legerius Sneed. So, I said this last week with TD. I don't think Brian Callahan can hold guys accountable. I don't think he can hold coaches accountable. I don't think he can hold players accountable off the field. I don't think he can hold players accountable on the field. I don't think he has it inside of him. And that's okay. You know, some people are great coordinators. They're not meant to be head coaches. Some people are great salespeople. They're not meant to be sales managers. And it feels like with Callahan, if you can't hold people accountable, if you implement this brand new leadership program and then your number one leader, your highest paid player or whatever it is with Simmons, he doesn't show up, well, it's hard for me to take you seriously. So I heard that today from Callahan, and I thought that was an embarrassing answer on his part. There was the opportunity to show his disappointment in the situation without commenting on what actually happened. Again, he doesn't have to say something like, yeah, I know Legerius is guilty. You don't have to say that. You just say something like, hey, our focus is always on the team. And I've had talks with Legerius about his focus needing to be on the team, even when he's not here. It needs to be on making good decisions and on being, focusing on the team while everybody's working. He could have said that he was disappointed with what happened, but he can't do it. Always has to be positive. Always has to let that guy off the hook. And that's why I think this is all going to fail. 615-737-1025. What I saw out of Cam Ward today. We'll hit that next. 615-737-1025 and your phone. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game.
Have you figured out what style, what messaging works best for Cam at this point?
I think so. I think Cam appreciates, every player I've ever been around likes to be coached. So I think he likes coaching. He can take hard coaching. I think his mother would be the first to tell you. She's very adamant about that part of it. And that's where you get the feel for that. He's capable of he's seen all different types. And so he responds to all of it pretty well. I think ultimately because he wants to be good, and whatever message it is, he can take the coaching part with the message. Generally speaking, you don't holler at quarterbacks the way that you do at some other positions, but there's a time and a place, and there's a lot of things he's learning right now about defensive structure, about what he can get away with the throws, with the timing. So it's sort of an everyday learning process for him, and it's been really good. But we coach him hard just like we coach everybody else.
Where did this guy learn how to coach? Typically you don't holler at the quarterbacks like you do the other guys. Really? You mean to tell me Bill Parcells didn't holler at Phil Simms? That Chuck Noll didn't holler at Terry Bradshaw?
Tell that to Will Levis last year.
I mean, what are we talking about here? Typically you don't holler at the quarterbacks. No, you don't holler at the quarterback when it's Peyton Manning in his 13th season. That's when you don't holler at the quarterback. What are we talking about here? So I do just want to go over a rundown of what Cam Ward looked like, because I'm sure many of you are going to ask the question, Jared, what did Cam Ward look like today at OTAs? And I'll say this, he looked fine. Arm, solid. Release, quick, which I think is very important. I talked about this when I did the film study of Cam Ward, how I felt like at the line of scrimmage, he was very nonchalant at Miami. An edge rusher would come free or a blitzer or something, and he just kind of, I'll just get away from this guy. And you can't really do that. The one mistake I felt like Cam made, he tried to run away from pressure and then threw a ball across the field, and it got batted down by Curtis Jacobs, a second-year linebacker who I've never heard of. That ball should have been intercepted, probably in a real game against a real team. That ball probably does get intercepted. But so I'd like to see that fixed a little bit. He missed a throw right in front of me to Ridley on 7-on-7. He had a couple of incompletions in the team period. One was a drop by James Prochet. Another was a drop by Elic Iomanor, or though you could have said on that pass breakup that it was pass interference, I would have thrown the flag, so I'm not going to dock him for that. He throws a good ball, he's got good zip on it. He's a little on the shorter side for a starting quarterback, which I don't love, but he's not Kyler Murray. And I kind of felt like, he looked like he belonged on the NFL field. He did not look like a fish out of water. He looked fine. Excuse me. He didn't look bad, and he didn't look great. And if somebody tells you, somebody that was there today in the media tells you differently and tells you that Cam Ward looked fabulous, Jared. Cam Ward looked like everything he's supposed to be. Cam Ward, they're not telling the truth. They might be telling you what they wanted to see, so they've told themselves they saw. But that's not what happened today. There wasn't enough today that they did, especially from a competition standpoint. There wasn't enough to be excited about. And that's not me knocking it. Again, like this is a process, and it's going to take time, and but there was really nothing that was like, oh my God, or oh my God. It was neither that, and that's fine. Brandon Allen did get the first team reps today. Brian Callahan said before the start of practice today, do not read into who gets the first team, second team, third team reps. It's all just kind of whatever. Brandon Allen got the first team reps. Cam got the second reps and got the most reps. Levis third, and Tim Boyle, who sucks, was fourth. I mean, Tim Boyle, again, you talk about like, oh man, you can see bad, fast, or special. Tim Boyle stinks. So just keep that in mind. 615-737-1025, which is the phone number if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. One text says, Callahan is such a softie. He has not been fantastic. Let's be real. And if the bar for Jeffrey Simmons is to be ready on Sundays, that's a low bar because everybody gets up for games. Practices are where it's tough. I'm trying to think of the right way to say this, because I even asked Reed during the break if he thought I was being too hard on Callahan, because I really do like Callahan, and I do think Callahan is a good guy, and I do think Callahan knows football. Do I think he's the best coach in the world? Absolutely not. But do I think he knows football? Yeah, I think he knows football. I just don't feel like Callahan can push back. I don't feel like he can do it. Like, I don't think Brian Callahan, 3 weeks into the season, if the defense is not doing what they need to be doing, can call Denard Wilson in the office and fire him. I do not think Brian Callahan can challenge Jeffrey Simmons. And I'm not talking about getting in front of the guys and, using the F word a couple of times and things like that, saying, we need to be tougher. We need to this. We need to that. I just don't think he can do it. I don't think he can tell somebody like, hey, man, you're not good enough. I don't think he can do it. And confrontation, it's not fun. But that's part of the job of being a head coach. I mean, he never seems to hold people accountable on the practice field. And I agree that, the games, the practice is where you can really have an effect on these things. The games, you're just calling the plays and deciding when to call timeout. And the games, that should be the easy part for a team and a coach. Practice is the tough part. I think Callahan works hard. I don't think he's lazy. But I don't know if he can be tough. And I'm not saying be Vrabel, where you're just an a-hole every day. But I am saying, like, hey, show some accountability here. I'll hold some guys accountable. I'll set the expectations and hold people to it. It's funny. I sent out a tweet over the weekend because I was in Toronto. And I was talking to so many different people. And I mean, everybody was talking about how the Leafs just broke their heart. And I promise you I'm going somewhere with this story, but I kept telling everybody, I'm like, guys, the Leafs were in Game 7 against the Florida Panthers, who went to the Cup 2 years ago, won the Cup last year. Tonight, they're probably going to beat Carolina to go back to the Cup. They might be a dynasty with really good players. And the Leafs went to Game 7 and lost. And everybody there's like, nope, total choke job. It was the worst. We suck. Blow it up. It's awful. It's it. And I'm like, you're right there. The second round of the playoffs, it's so hard in the NHL. The margins are so small. And I say that because Vingan texted me. And Vingan was like, that doesn't sound like something you'd say. And I'm like, that's exactly what I would say. Because in life, I believe in standards. Like, I never sit there and say, like, hey, we should win every game. I never sit there and say you should win the World Series every year. You should win the Super Bowl. You should win the championship. I never say that. There need to be expectations. And if somebody reaches the expectations, and they should be fair expectations, then they should be rewarded. And if they don't, they should be held accountable. And far too often in all of this, I feel like we just sit back and we get mad when someone tries to hold somebody accountable for something that's very basic. And then we, at times, apparently, we just don't accept what should be fair expectations when they're met. Now, I thought Mike Mularkey was a great example of this. In his second year, he took the worst team in the NFL. And the first year won 9 games. And so then there was, let's build on that. Let's see where it goes. Mike Mularkey, as the head coach of the Titans, went to the divisional round of the playoffs in year 2. Won a playoff game for the first time in 15 years in that organization. Went to the playoffs for the first time in a decade. Lost to Tom Brady and the New England Patriots and got fired. And I couldn't believe it. And everybody in town was like, yep, they should have done that. And I'm like, were the expectations to beat Tom Brady in the divisional round of the playoffs? Because a lot of good teams and a lot of good coaches haven't beaten Tom Brady in the playoffs. What are we doing? And so I have pushed back upon guys getting fired when I feel like they have met expectations or are getting a raw deal. When it comes to Callahan, I don't think he can do that. I don't think Callahan can push back if somebody's getting a raw deal because they are meeting the expectations, but you have higher expectations than you should have. And I don't think Callahan can hold people accountable to the expectations that they should be meeting. And if you're a coach and you can't hold people accountable, I don't think you can be coach. And I'm still waiting. I mean, I have the cut sheet from the things Callahan said today at the press conference in front of me. Callahan feels good with the players they've added. Callahan, Jeffrey Simmons' outlook. We just played that cut earlier where he said everything's great even though he's not there. Callahan. Let's see, there's a couple in here that I'm like, oh, God. Callahan likes the guys they added this offseason. Callahan on Legerius Sneed's off-the-field issues and possible grand jury. We played that cut where he basically wants to give him an award for how he's handled it. It's like, hold some people accountable for a change. And no, the special teams coach that everybody knew had to be fired, that one doesn't count. One actually says a point system is a freaking joke. It's how factories keep up with attendance and when it's time to fire them. This is so corporate and not real football. This to me is Callahan going to the corporate guys that don't know ball, Brinker and Nihill and those guys trying to keep his job. Saying, here's the thing that I figured out. What he really should have gone to is he should have sat down with him and said, all right, here's the deal. I need a veteran defensive coordinator. I'm firing Denard Wilson. I need a veteran defensive coordinator that I can just give that side of the ball to. Lou Anarumo got the axe in Cincinnati. That's the perfect guy. Go put him in there, and he's doing that, and I'm going to focus on the offense, and that's what we're going to do. And instead, it's the opposite. Instead, it was Callahan, kind of watching between the two fields today at practice, like Bear Bryant up in the giant ivory tower that Bear Bryant used to watch practice from. But again, what do I know? The Titans are going to win every game according to everybody out there because everything's so optimistic. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
Stephon Diggs has gotten a lot of traction in the last 24 hours or so. He's on a boat, having a good time, but the question comes in as to a certain substance that people are guessing what is and isn't. Is this something that the team has to look into?
Well, it's something that we're aware of, and obviously we want to make great decisions on and off the field. And we're hoping that with our time here on the field today, and that when we don't have a script and we're on the call-up periods, that we're making great decisions. And so the message will be the same for all our players, that we're trying to make great decisions, and any conversations that I've had with Stephon will remain between him and I and the club.
Have you talked to him since the video?
I talk to our players every single day, the ones that are here and the ones that aren't.
Are you expecting him to practice today, Mike?
Not if he's not here.
So he's not here.
You guys will find out in a minute. But no, again.
He was here last week, according to a video.
Everything that we're going to do, Karen, is we're going to coach the guys that show up at 8. And the ones that say, hey, I got a situation, we'll be at 8:05. We'll coach those as well. This is a voluntary part of our off-season program. And every player that's not here, which there aren't many, have been in communication with me and their position coaches.
I was just going to ask, based on what you've seen from the times he's been around, how would you say he's progressing?
Again, the timelines and the prognosis and everything again, we're working hard to get him back and to be ready to go. But, you know, when he's here, we'll coach him and we'll have everything ready to go.
There you go. That's Mike Vrabel dealing with the first problem. This is Stephon Diggs, again, on a boat, and there was a package of a pink substance, or a pink package of a substance that most people think is cocaine. And so Vrabel's like, yep, we're aware of it. We're dealing with it. So I'm just going to say this. You know, Ty texts in and says, firing Vrabel was a bad decision. And I replied back, have you seen his coaching staff in New England? Because it's pretty much all the same Vrabel buddies, along with Josh McDaniels, as Vrabel had here, that drove all of us crazy. I believe that when it comes to the Patriots and the money they spent and the great Mike Vrabel and all of that, this is their version of let Rand cook. Last year, where they spent all that money in free agency and the Titans gassed everybody up and thought they were going to be good at, you will see. And a lot of people around the country didn't take the bait. I think they have with the Patriots because, again, it's the great Mike Vrabel. But already on day 1, day 2, day whatever, he is dealing with what I think is a test. Because I think Diggs is like, I don't give a rat's ass about you guys. And so we shall see. But I don't think it's going to work. That's it for us. Stillman and Company, we are out of here. We will see everybody at the golf course. That's right. 615 opens tomorrow. We'll see everybody at 2.